I'm Jennifer I from the Atlanta City Council, representing District 6 and this year's chair of the Finance Executive Committee.
Do you have a question, comment, or a suggestion related to the City of Atlanta's proposed fiscal year 2021 budget? The Atlanta City Council wants to hear from residents and stakeholders. Which services do you feel need to be prioritized in the fiscal year 2021 budget, which begins July 1st? The general fund budget is set at $673.4 million. There are several ways to reach out and submit your questions and comments to the Council today and during the virtual town hall meeting Tuesday, June 2nd at 6:15 p.m. Send your email to budgettalk@atlantaga.gov. If you'd prefer, you can submit a video of your question, as long as it's 15 seconds or less. For social media, tweet us at ATL Council using the hashtag ATLBudget. Submit your questions by messaging us on our Facebook page at ATL Council. To call in your questions, dial 404-546-1928, or you can text us at 404-548-2885.
We know how important the city budget is to you. We welcome your thoughts and your feedback. Thank you.
I've decided to renew the state of emergency for a third time through 11:59 p.m. on July 12th, 2020. This against coronavirus.
I'm Phyllis Jackson. Welcome to Stay at Home Connect.
With that extension, Governor Brian Kemp announces reopening guidelines for several entities, including bars and nightclubs, which will be allowed to reopen June 1st, with 39 mandatory guidelines. The new executive order allows for an increase of public gathering sizes up to 25 people in one location, as long as they abide by social distancing rules. Live venues will remain closed for now, but overnight summer camps can open provided they meet 33 guidelines, and amusement parks will be allowed to reopen June 12th, also with mandatory guidelines. Officials from Six Flags of Georgia tell me they've been working on new COVID-19 reopening protocols since March. I spoke with Gene Petriello, Director of Marketing for Six Flags and Whitewater Theme Parks.
In order for you to visit the park, you must make a reservation online. They're going to go through an infrared thermal scan, temperature scan to make sure that they are not experiencing a temperature. And you're going to go through a contactless, security, innovative checkpoint where we will not touch anybody's bag. We are requiring that all our guests wear a mask if you're 3 or older in our park. Both to get into the park and throughout your visit, you must wear your mask.
Infectious disease expert Dr. Carlos Del Rio issues caution with respect to getting out and resuming life in this new COVID-19 reality.
Practice social distance. Be careful. This is not normal times. It will be normal times later. It's not going to be, but it's not right now. And just please be careful. I don't want to see you infected. I don't want to see you become a statistic.
Atlanta City Council member Dustin Hillis introduces legislation prohibiting street racing, a growing problem since the COVID-19 pandemic left many streets with little to no traffic.
Can one girl in a small town, an architect in a major city, and a suburban high school coach shape the future of the United States? Yes, they can. Because every 10 years, the census gives us that power. You can shape your future by responding to the 2020 census. Where do we need new roads to make our lives easier? Where will new school programs help our children thrive? Where could a new health clinic benefit neighborhoods? The 2020 census will inform these decisions and shape how billions of dollars will be distributed to communities like yours each year. And in 2020, you can respond to the census online, by phone, or by mail. It's easy, safe, and important. Make sure you and everyone you know is counted. Now is the time for you to get involved. Your community needs you. Together, we can educate and excite, inspire and make sure every voice is heard. Together, we can shape our future.
Hi, I'm Jennifer I from the Atlanta City Council, representing District 6 and this year's chair of the Finance Executive Committee.
Do you have a question, comment, or a suggestion related to the City of Atlanta's proposed fiscal year 2021 budget? The Atlanta City Council wants to hear from residents and stakeholders. Which services do you feel need to be prioritized in the fiscal year 2021 budget, which begins July 1st? The general fund budget is set at $673.4 million. There are several ways to reach out and submit your questions and comments to the Council today and during the virtual Town Hall meeting Tuesday, June 2nd at 6:15 p.m. Send your email to budgettalk@atlantagA.gov. If you'd prefer, you can submit a video of your question, as long as it's 15 seconds or less. For social media, tweet us at ATL Council using the hashtag ATLBudget. Submit your questions by messaging us on our Facebook page at ATL Council. To call in your questions, dial 404-546-1928, or you can text us at 404-548-2885.
We know how important the city budget is to you. We welcome your thoughts and your feedback. Thank you.
I've decided to renew the state of emergency for a third time through 11:59 p.m. on July 12th, 2020. This declaration, as you know, plays a critical, important role in our battle against coronavirus.
I'm Phyllis Jackson. Welcome to Stay at Home Connect.
With that extension, Governor Brian Kemp announces reopening guidelines for several entities, including bars and nightclubs, which will be allowed to reopen June 1st, with 39 mandatory guidelines. The new executive order allows for an increase of public gathering sizes up to 25 people in one location, as long as they abide by social distancing rules. Live venues will remain closed for now, but overnight summer camps can open provided they meet 33 guidelines, and amusement parks will be allowed to reopen June 12th, also with mandatory guidelines. Officials from Six Flags of Georgia tell me they've been working on new COVID-19 reopening protocols since March. I spoke with Gene Petriello, Director of Marketing for Six Flags and Whitewater Theme Parks.
In order for you to visit the park, you must make a reservation online. They're going to go through an infrared thermal scan, temperature scan to make sure that they are not experiencing a temperature. And you're going to go through a contactless, security, innovative checkpoint where we will not touch anybody's bag. We are requiring that all our guests wear a mask if you're 3 or older in our park. Both to get into the park and throughout your visit, you must wear your mask.
Infectious disease expert Dr. Carlos Del Rio issues caution with respect to getting out and resuming life in this new COVID-19 reality.
Practice social distance. Be careful. This is not normal times. It will be normal times later. It's not going to be, but it's not right now. And just please be careful. I don't want to see you infected. I don't want to see you become a statistic.
Atlanta City Council member Dustin Hillis introduces legislation prohibiting street racing, a growing problem since the COVID-19 pandemic left many streets with little to no traffic.
Good evening, everybody. Apologies for the late start, but this is Councilmember Jennifer I. The time is now, I think, 3 minutes past 6 on Tuesday, June 2nd, 2020. I am the chair of the Finance Executive Committee, and this is our remote public hearing on the tax millage rate. I'm joined tonight by Vice Chair Howard Shook of the Finance Executive Committee, and several of my colleagues will do a brief roll call in just a minute. In fact, I'm going to ask somebody from City Council staff, if Ms. Kempson Wright or somebody else can do a brief roll call.
Yes, I will give everyone a moment to be unmuted. Council President Moore.
Present.
Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Faroki. Councilmember Brown. Councilmember Winslow.
Present.
Councilmember Archibald.
Here.
Councilmember Shook.
Aye.
Councilmember Mazakite. Councilmember Hillis.
Here.
Councilmember Boone.
Present.
Councilmember Overstreet. Councilmember Shepherd. Councilmember Bond. Councilmember Westmoreland.
Here.
Councilmember Dickens. Madam Chair, there are a total of 9 attendees on the line with you at this time.
Thank you so much. And just, there are 2 public hearings tonight, which is a little bit confusing. So before I turn it over, this is the public hearing for the tax millage rate per the published notice from the Office of Revenue. And as soon as we finish this one at 6:15, we're going to roll into our remote. Apologies on that. We're going to roll into our remote budget public hearing, which is our interactive community meeting. We're going to do that at 6:15. So we may roll one into the next, or we may take a pause for just a few minutes. But now I want to welcome our Chief Financial Officer of the city, Mr. Roosevelt Council, to present the millage rate for the fiscal year 2021 budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, council members. This evening, the Department of Finance would like to present the FY21 proposed property tax mill rate. The city has yet to receive an authorized 2020 tax digest from Fulton County. So the proposed fiscal year 21 operating levy, will be an estimate for budgetary purposes, reflecting the prior year's mill until we receive the said tax digest. Fulton County is required to present the digest to the state by August 1st. So that's the latest that we think that we would receive it. And the bills will be subsequently mailed 2 weeks after that date and will be due back in 45 days from the mail date for Fulton County and 60 days from the mail date for DeKalb County. Next slide, slide number 2. As stated, this particular net tax digest and millage value for the operating levy reflects an FY 2021 proposed rate, which is the FY 2020 mill rate, as stated, until we receive the tax digest. For the bond levy, the levy is also basically a reflection of the prior year as well as the parks levy. And so at this point, for the proposed tax digest and millage value, the FY21 proposed mill rate will be 10.23, which is reflective of fiscal year 2020 rate. Next slide. This slide is a breakdown of the tax levies by municipality. As you can see in the pie, that the Atlanta Public School receives 6% of the tax levies, where the city of Atlanta operating receives 21, and Fulton County, DeKalb, received 25, with 3% actually going to the city of Atlanta bonds, mill bonds. Atlanta Public Schools, as I mentioned, is the receipt of the 50%. Fulton and DeKalb County is 25. In the city of Atlanta, general operating is 21%. In the city of Atlanta, bond is 3%. In the city of Atlanta, park is 1%. Madam Chair, that is the presentation for the FY21 proposed property tax mill rate.
Thank you so much, Mr. Counsel. Colleagues, if you have any questions on the mill rate, raise your hand, send me a message. All right. I am not seeing any questions at this time. Everybody knows how to track you down, Mr. Counsel. So if people have questions, we will find you and we will get our questions answered. And we're going to now take about a 6-minute pause, and then we're going to come back for our interactive budget meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Madam Chair. Madam Chair.
Oh, yes.
This is Councilmember Bonds. Just a quick question for the CFO. Mr. CFO, can you tell us how many years in a row that the city of Atlanta has not increased its millage rate? I think it's 12 years, if I'm not mistaken.
He may be having a technical issue.
Well, I just simply wanted to make the point that it's been 12 years since we adjusted our millage rate up. We have not increased taxes for 12 years, so just wanted the public to know that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bond. I appreciate it. All right. We're going to take a 5-minute break, and we will be back to start our community meeting on our fiscal year 2021 proposed budget.
All right. Thank you.
started. Apologies for running 2 minutes late. Good evening, everyone. This is Councilmember Jennifer I, the chair of the Finance Executive Committee. Thank you for joining us this evening at the Atlanta City Council for the fiscal year 2021 interactive community budget session. This is one of the main opportunities that the public has to participate in our budget process as we review the mayor's proposed budget and get ready to pass a budget for the coming fiscal year by June 30th, if not sooner. There were many ways that the public was able to submit questions and statements. They could do it through Facebook, email, text messages, voicemail. We're going to be playing those tonight. We're joined by members of the administration who are going to help provide answers and provide updates to your questions. We did just have a public hearing on the millage rate, which many of Atlanta City Council members were able to join. I have a feeling a few more have joined for this meeting, so I'm going to ask Ms. Kempson-Wright if you would please do a roll call, and then we will move into the public comments. But let's do a roll call so the public knows that other members of Atlanta City Council have joined us this evening.
Yes, ma'am. I'll pause for 1 moment to let the controller unmute. Council President Felicia Moore.
Present.
Councilmember Carla Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Amir R. Faroki. Councilmember Antonio Brown. Councilmember Cleta Winslow.
Present.
Councilmember Natalie Archibald.
Here.
Councilmember Howard Shook. Councilmember J.P. Mazakite. Councilmember Dustin Hillis.
Here.
Councilmember Andrea Boone.
Present.
Councilmember Marcy Collier Overstreet. Councilmember Joyce Shepard. Councilmember Michael Julian Bond.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Matt Westmoreland.
Here.
Councilmember Andre Dickens. Madam Chair, there are a total of 10 attendees online with you at this time.
Thank you so much, and thank you to my colleagues for joining us tonight. I am going to ask for a little bit of patience as we try to do this, what is usually an in-person interactive session, remotely. That's a little bit trickier from a technological point of view than some of our other budget hearings. So how we are going to start is with our public comments that were received via voicemail. One of the main topics that we have gotten questions and comments about for this budget season have to do with the Atlanta jail, and I'm going to try to group those comments together so that they can be answered collectively and also in sufficient detail to capture all of the comments made about the jail, but just for efficiency's sake to try to group those together. So I'm going to ask Mr. Massenberg if you will, or Mr. Lewis, if you'll start with the voicemails received. Most of these are statements. We're going to play them, and to the extent there are any questions, then we will address the questions in the voicemails.
Hi, it's Rebecca Mountain. I live in Grant Park, Plant 303. I am calling to strongly urge you to demand, actually, that you reallocate funds for the fiscal year 2021, specifically focusing on the overzealous policing budget. I would particularly urge you to reallocate funds towards, for example, grants and community development, which right now only has $300,400 allocated to it, in opposition to the $262 million for policing, that works out to about $40 per month, and only 5 cents per month for grants and community development. Additionally, the Citizen Review Board, which only right now has 940 dedicated to it, is an absolutely essential organization which needs to be lifted up and strengthened and needs significantly more money than is currently allocated to it. Thank you very much. Again, my name is Rebecca Knox. And so zip code 30315.
I'm an Atlanta resident and I pay taxes in your city, and I do not want to see a single dollar given to the police with the fiscal budget. If you increase that, we will be out protesting every day. I do not want to see you increasing that budget at all. I don't want to see them given a single more dollar. They don't need a tank. They don't need riot gear. They don't need any of that shit. Please, please, if you want people to stop protesting, you have a chance right now. Promise you're going to decrease the budget. Right now. Tonight. Get rid of the police. Defund them tonight.
I am calling regarding the 2021 proposed budget. I see that the police department budget is being increased of $13 million. In light of recent events, I would ask that you move that funding to social services and defund the police. Thank you and have a good day. The 2021 budget is increasing the police department funding by $13 million. In light of recent events, I would ask that money get instead deferred to public services and public social support. The police does not need this funding. Thank you. Have a good day.
Hi, my name is Paul Noonan, and I am a resident of the city of Atlanta, and I believe your 2021 budget proposal to be preposterous. There is no way our law enforcement needs a third of the general fund receipts that the city receives from its residents. No. Take their money away, give it to the Citizens Review Board, give it to the Department of Ethics, give it to the Department of Transportation, use our roads to fund the police, use the parks, use the sidewalks, make our lives better, not worse.
If you're as honored to serve your people as you say, you'll quit funding the police that are tear gassing and firing at its own people, the people of Atlanta. Funding the police. The police budget, don't give them another dime.
I was on the other call. But go ahead. You're not on the public.
Of government in action. And Howard, senior advocate, public policy analyst, has come to ask you to think outside of the box and create a special whistleblower fund. That whistleblower fund will be a $15 million fund which would make payments of $1 million to each whistleblower that exposes the perpetrator in the city of Atlanta. Hopefully, that $1 million will allow the whistleblower to start a new life, because finding a job later will be nearly impossible. But as we know, corporate birds of a feather flock together. The funds will be replenished from the sale of the assets of the perpetrators. If you choose to create such a task force, I ask you to please find a way to keep the NPUR 9 from participating and putting kinks in the plan. Thank you.
My name is Anthony Malloy, and I'm a constituent
constituent in Atlanta. Mr. Code is 30312. I am calling to leave this message and ask that the City Council spend $80 million on the Atlanta City Detention Center. I think that we should be working to close this detention center, and that budget should be reflecting the actual needs of Atlanta, not criminalizing people for poverty and other issues that are common reasons that people are put into that jail. Thank you.
Hello, City Council. Thank you for serving the people of Atlanta. One of the things I believe will benefit the people of Atlanta is to zero out the budget for corrections and announce a date certain for the jail's closure, and that you also retrain and redeploy the current Atlanta Department of Correction employees to another city department to do the admirable and future building work of community-based care. That we need to continue to invest in community care and to defund the police and invest in public health. And spending $18 million on this jail is a huge waste of money that is the people of Atlanta's money for our city, and we do not need this jail to be there. So thank you for hearing, thank you for listening and representing the people and creating the change that Atlanta needs to build a brighter and better future for each and every one of us, one that all of us are equal, where every community is valued and poured into and not policed. Thank you for doing the work.
Hi there, my name is Emily Johnson, and I am a constituent in the city of Atlanta. I am calling to express that I would like the proposed budget of $18 million going to the Atlanta Correctional Facility, that is up for vote. I am requesting that money be directed away from incarceration and to protecting our communities and serving our communities, especially in light of the coronavirus pandemic. That money does not need to go to jails. That money needs to go to help our marginalized communities and to help them protect themselves from this pandemic. Do not put that money towards jails. That is not where it needs to go. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Colleen Clark, and I live in Fulton County. I'm calling you to ask you to move $18 million in the city's proposed budget out of the Atlanta City Detention Center. With the COVID crisis, the city faces a $40 million deficit and should not be wasting $18 million of taxpayer money to operate a jail that's mostly empty and already slated for closure. Employees of the ACDC should be moved to other departments so they can learn skills for future jobs and truly be of service to our city during this crisis. Move $18 million from cuffs to care and protect the safety and wellness of all Atlantans. There's no reason why this detention center should be so well funded when there are so many people suffering right now from much bigger problems like COVID-19. You have the budget to help. Please, please, please use that money to save lives. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.
Hi, my name is Jay Mancia. I am an Atlanta City resident, and I'm a student at the Morehouse School of Medicine. And I just wanted to submit my comments for the next year's budget. I think that this is a crucial time where a very promising time for real transformative change in the realm of criminal justice and our city's relationship to policing. I do not believe that the police should be the lead agency dealing with all the social illnesses of our city, homelessness, mental health, dealing with sex work, drugs, all these things ask too much of the police and thus they take up too much of our budget. I think that this is a moment where half-handed measures of police reform will not do enough, and we need to go about real transformation and with a mindset of decarceration. And I think a very tangible way we can do this is with this next year's budget. One, I believe that the $18 million dedicated to the Atlanta City Detention Center can be put to other better uses. There's so many better ways to support the city than this almost empty building that sort of perpetuates cycles of mass incarceration. And I think that what the city council can do in a tangible way is reject this budget, proposed budget that increases our police force budget by having $12 million and almost decreases all other department funding. Perhaps this is oversimplistic, but it does show and it tells us, the citizens of Atlanta, what your priorities are. And I do not think you are being imaginative enough, and I think that you can be bolder and take a step. And one of the most crucial steps is to defund or to significantly reduce the funding, or at least not increase the funding of the police department here. I think that can take a huge step towards creating an Atlanta that works for everyone. Thank you, and hope you all have a good day.
Hi, my name is Jay Mantia. My question regarding the budget concerns the decrease in almost all departments and increase in the Office of Law Enforcement. So the police budget increasing at the expense of almost every other department does not seem like a reflection of where our priorities should be. I was just listening to the city council meeting. They were talking about how they would have to put some things on hold budgetarily, like in terms of like the East Side TAD, some housing projects were mentioned. And I just want to ask the question about what these law enforcement budget increases are going to, and how we can start the conversation about reallocating some of those to some of these necessary projects that can perhaps are more reflective of our city's priorities. I appreciate the opportunity to express my concerns, and thank you all. Have a good day.
Hello, this is Mike Davis calling on behalf of City Route ATL. I am an Atlanta resident living in the West End, and I just wanted to express the need for some sort of funding mechanism for low-income housing to be put into the city budget. I know that the $200 million housing opportunity bond was in there or thought of at some point as far as some legislation to get passed, and then it got reduced to $100 million in conversations, and then now it's not currently represented in the budget. And I don't believe that now is the time to back off as far as addressing our city's low-income housing crisis, but instead, actually contrary to that, now is the time to take bold, decisive action. And I believe that something needs to be put in there to ensure that we are going to be creating more low-income housing for the folks that are being negatively infected because of COVID-19 and have been historically disenfranchised in the housing space, as well as we're seeing also have some effects. And so I just wanted to express that and leave with a question to the council and the city on what is the plan for the housing opportunity bond, and also what is the plan in general to ensure that there is funding for creating additional low-income housing. Thanks so much.
Hi, my name is Michael Martin, and I'm a resident of the city of Atlanta. I wanted to provide feedback on the priorities for the 2021 fiscal year budget. I believe that as a city, we should prioritize investment in complete street initiatives to make roadways safer for all users instead of just drivers. I additionally think that we, in light of recent events, we need to consider whether the police budget should be increased to such a significant degree without similarly investing oversight into police conduct. I feel that we should be looking to demilitarize the police force and focus on strengthening our relationships with the community as opposed to alienating them. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sharif Salter. I'm a born and raised resident of Atlanta, Georgia, 22 years old, and I am just calling to voice my opinion on the city's meeting tonight. That with our tax dollars and how much we pay taxes, I think I speak for a lot of citizens that we do not want to see an increase in police funding whatsoever, and if anything, we'd like to see a decrease in police funding. Regardless of what happens, we don't want to increase. So if it stays the same, at the very least, we'd like to see that money that would go into an increase be allocated to other resources such as social work, mental health work, and other things that are more beneficial and less violent to the community than the police force. So I really hope that you all are listening to these voicemails. I know you are getting a lot of them, and I hope this impacts the decisions tonight. Thank you very much.
Hey, I'm a resident calling from Reynoldstown, Cabbagetown area, zip code 30316. My name's Rachel. I have the following request for the City of Atlanta budget. You should move the $18 million that's allocated for the Atlanta Detention Center and repurpose it into the public health crisis, which is COVID-19. This is a huge crisis, especially impacting people of color and people in lower income, and we should do the responsible thing to reallocate those funds, which are for a prison that is mostly empty and is slated for closure, and move them to the more pressing issue of this public health crisis. We should also reallocate money used for the police and for detention centers in general, put into different kinds of programs that will better benefit our community, such as wellness programs and social services. This is not a time to be giving more money to police and detention centers, so please consider other ways to allocate this money. We could, on emergency calls, be dispatching social workers instead of police. So I think we really need to reconsider that $18 million especially. There's no reason that shouldn't be moved immediately, and then all other funding for police and detention needs to be reconsidered immediately. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kaylee Turbo. I'm a citizen of Atlanta. My zip code is 30324. I have a question regarding the Atlanta budget. Why is the police budget so high? As current events are unfolding, it is clear to me that a militarized and well-funded police force is nothing but a danger to us citizens. I'm afraid. I'm afraid for my well-being. I'm afraid for my friends who are out there on the streets protesting for our rights. We need to defund the police now and put that money towards our actual citizens and helping us, not hurting us. Thank you.
Hi there, my name's Hunter Dry. I'm a resident of the city of Atlanta. I've spent the last 15 months working with Emory Healthcare up until recently when they had a financial woes and had to lay off a lot of their workers. I'm working hard fighting this coronavirus. I'm not calling about that, though. I'm calling about the financial budget. I find it, quite frankly, appalling that we are increasing our police budget in light of recent events. I see absolutely no utility in continuing to increase funding. I see because that leads to nothing but more over-policing, more violence, and the fact that there doesn't go hand in hand with any kind of additional regulations or legislative or policy changes is that's unacceptable. I see no reason to increase police budget. Please do not increase funding.
Is that the conclusion of the voicemail? Okay, that is the end of the voicemail. What I'm going to do is ask the administration to respond to just one or two of these now, but I don't believe we have any further questions or comments. on, and then because I do know related to the police department and jail and housing bond and some other topics that there are more questions to come in those areas, I'm going to hold those so we can answer them collectively. But I would like, and I'm going to, since we're not all in the room together, when I turn to the administration, I'm just going to call on the Chief Operating Officer for the city, Joshua Williams, and then he can call on the correct representative from the administration to provide an answer. There was one question in here related to transportation, and there was a comment, and I think there was a question about prioritizing complete streets. And so, Mr. Williams, if the administration can just explain what the budget does with regard to complete streets, let's answer that one, and then we can hold some of the other ones and answer them as a group.
All right. Well, thank you, Councilmember Iden. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to join tonight, and certainly appreciate those who are listening on this call. I will turn it over to Mr. Josh Rowan, our Commissioner of the newly formed Atlanta DOT, to respond to the question related to the complete streets. Mr. Rowan, are you on the call?
Yes, sir, Mr. Williams. This is Commissioner Josh Rowan from the DOT. Related to the complete streets, those projects are contained within the Renew T-SPLOST program. So we have a prioritized list and an implementation schedule that takes us through the completion of that construction program.
Thank you, Mr. Rowan. I appreciate that. There was one other standalone, more of a comment than a question, that I will just briefly address, of asking us to consider including a whistleblower fund. I will say that this budget does fully fund an Office of Inspector General that was created by the mayor and city council in this current year. The Inspector General will be our new city watchdog, and once we have that individual hired, we'll be building that department and making all the decisions about strategies and mechanisms for making us a more transparent, efficient, ethical city. And so we will pass along that idea when we have an Inspector General on board for the city. The remainder of the questions, let's hold for right now. Let's turn to our video comments. And so we can get those queued up, and we'll play the video comments. I am keeping a list we'll address the other questions all together in groups. Just one moment while we figure out the technical issues here. I can see the video playing, but it's not coming over the phone line, so can we try to figure out how we can get the audio on the phone?
Must. In 2018, Mayor Bottoms made a commitment to build ACDC. Now she's breaking her promise to the people and asking you to keep funding it. We ask you, the City Council, to put people first and allocate the $18 million from cost to care.
In 2018, Mayor Bottoms made a commitment to fund ACDC. Now she's breaking her promise to the people and asking you to keep funding it. We ask you, the City Council, to put the people first and allocate the $18 million from CUP to CARE.
In 2018, Mayor Bottoms made a commitment to close ACDC. Now she's breaking her promise to the people and asking you to keep funding it. We ask you, the City Council, to put the people first and allocate
2018, Mayor Bottoms made a commitment to close ACDC. Now she's breaking her promise to the people and asking you to keep funding it. We ask you, the City Council, to put the people first and allocate the $18 million from cost to curb.
In 2018, Mayor Bottoms made a commitment to close ACDC. Now she's breaking her promise to the people and asking you to keep funding it. We ask you, the City Council, to put the people first and allocate the $18 million from cost to care.
In 2018, Mayor Bottoms made a commitment to close the Atlanta City Detention Center. Now she is breaking that promise and asking you to continue funding ACDC. We ask City Council to put the people first by allocating the $18 million from cost to care.
My name is Reverend Lindsay Huggins, and I'm advocating from cuff to care because we have the opportunity to make a choice with this budget decision. We have the opportunity to choose for our communities rehabilitation over violent retribution.
The audio on the first one or two, maybe three videos. So if we could just play those again and make sure that we get those connected to the conference line, that'd be great.
Hello, I live in DeKalb County, and I support From Cuffs to Care because it's unconscionable that our city spent tens of millions of dollars to lock people up for petty offenses when we are experiencing a worldwide health emergency and we need help.
Hi, my name is Richard Romero. I work in the film industry here in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm a resident, and I remain with the city. Please move $18 million from cuffs to care to protect the safety and wellness of Atlanta. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Leah Clements, and we must divert $18 million from ACDC into community care and resources, because that reflects the Atlanta that we must build.
In 2018, Mayor Bottoms made a commitment to build ACDC. Now she's breaking her promise to the people and asking you to keep funding it. We ask you, the City Council, to put people first and allocate the $18 million from cost to care.
In 2018, Mayor Bottoms made a commitment to close ACDC. Now she's breaking her promise to the people and asking you to keep funding it. We ask you, the City Council, to put the people first and allocate the $18 million from cost to care.
In 2018, Mayor Bottoms made a commitment to close ACDC. Now she's breaking her promise to the people and asking you to keep funding it. We ask you, the City Council, to put the people first and allocate the $18 million from cost to care.
In 2018, Mayor Bottoms made a commitment to close ACDC. Now she's breaking her promise to the people and asking you to keep funding it. We ask you, the City Council, to put the people first and allocate the $18 million from cost to care.
In 2018, Mayor Bottoms made a commitment to close ACDC. Now she's breaking her promise to the people and asking you to keep funding it. We ask you, the City Council, to put the people first and allocate the $18 million from cost to care.
In 2018, Mayor Bottoms made a commitment to close the Atlanta City Detention Center. Now she is breaking that promise and asking you to continue funding ACDC. We ask City Council to put the people first by allocating the $18 million from cost to care.
My name is Reverend Lindsay Huggins, and I'm advocating from cuff to care because we have the opportunity to make a choice with this budget decision. We have the opportunity to choose for our communities rehabilitation over violent retribution.
All right, well, thank you to everybody who took the time to record a video and send it in to us, and as well for the people who sent in voicemails. I thank you for your patience and your creativity in participating in our budget hearing tonight. I'm going to move into the messages that we have received in writing. And again, we are going to have the administration or council respond to the questions that have been raised, but there are several that fall into similar categories, so we're going to try to answer those collectively. I'm going to move to our written questions that are with regard to the Atlanta Detention Center. So I'm going to go through those, beginning with the text messages. My name is Chelsea. I'm a constituent in District 3, an educator and a caseworker for immigrant families. I want to see the City Council reflect a shift from criminalization to care. Mayor Bottoms and Council, uphold your promise to defund Atlanta Detention Center, move $18 million of funding towards a community wellness and resource center, and invest in public health and education. Public schools will be important community resources in the wake of COVID. We need our city's school district to have a budget that reflects the need for our wraparound services for our kids, mental health care and social workers, and health services for our students and families. Next text message, do not fund ACDC. As an Atlanta resident in these terrible times, I implore you to show leadership and not fund the Atlanta City Detention Center in the 2021 budget. Instead, that $18 million should be directed to community-based care. Thank you, Carolyn Houseman. Next text message. For the budget vote, please continue to close the Atlanta City Detention Center and as soon as it is fiscally possible, repurpose it as a Center for Wellness and Freedom. Now more than ever, we as a city need to move our dollars from cuffs to care. May Atlanta be a leader. Thank you, Susan Haygood. Next text message. Hello, my name is Donovan Ellis and I live in the 5th Congressional District. I am writing to add my voice to the thousands urging you to take immediate action to finally close the city's extra jail and redirect the $18 million in the proposed 2020-21 city budget to protect the health and wellness of all Atlantans. In a time of public health crisis and loss of millions to the city's revenue, it is unacceptable for the city of Atlanta to spend $18 million to continue to operate a jail that sits mostly empty and is already slated for closure and repurposing. Now more than ever, we must put an end to incarcerating our community over petty offenses and instead direct our time, energy, and resources to sustaining and supporting our Atlanta citizens. Please do the right thing regarding the allocation of these much-needed funds. Next text message. I stand with Song ATL. We must move the $18 million from petty punishment to improve public health. We must defund and demilitarize our police force. We must invest in public health. Next text message. Please vote to redirect funds away from jails. I believe in, quote, cuffs to care. We need and deserve more community-based care. Next text message. Hi, I am texting to demand that the City Council redirects $18 million from cuffs to care. This building should be a center for wellness and freedom. Hello, I'm texting to demand that the City of Atlanta redirect the proposed $18 million detention center budget to care programs instead. I do not agree with $18 million planned for detention centers. We need to use that money for public health, redirect that funding from cuffs to care. The funds being allocated to ACDC in the latest budget could have funded Peachtree and Pine at full operating costs for a decade, meaning an overhaul and renovation of the shelter to make it the place that it could have been. My partner and I are about to purchase a home in Eastlake. I'm citing it on the inspection right now, reading about the city that I'm about to be a citizen of, and it really saddens me that this is how much the local government values human life. It can be better than this. It always could. And if you need anything making it so, please try. Please do not budget $18 million to the Atlanta City Detention Center. The institution does not increase public safety. Prioritize community-based care and support $18 million from cuffs to care. I am a resident of the 30032 zip code in Atlanta. With regard to the Atlanta City Council budget meeting tomorrow, I am texting to ask you to take the $18 million that has been allocated to the Atlanta City Detention Center and use it for cuffs to care. In this time of pandemic, those resources would be much better used for community-based care and that repurposing of the detention center to a Center for Wellness and Freedom. Audrey Salt. Hi. As a City of Atlanta resident, I would like to urge the Mayor and City Council today to vote to redirect the $18 million in the 2020-21 budget for the City Detention Center to the planned Center for Wellness and Freedom. Our community has demonstrated clearly the last few weeks that we need resources to shift from cuffs to care. Thank you.
I am texting to ask you not to fund the jail. That money should be moved to Cuffs to Care. Prioritize the community-based care and support we have always known to be the basis of true public health and safety instead. Dear Atlanta City Council, I would like to see priority given to defunding the APD due to clear abuse of power and that money put into community support projects, including creating the Center for Wellness and Freedom in the former Atlanta City Detention Center. Sincerely, Elizabeth K's Atlanta resident. Hey, ATL. My name is Allison Radonsky, and I'm a Decatur resident. At tonight's budget talks, I ask that you redistribute the $18 million set aside for the Atlanta City Detention Center. We don't need more jails, and we don't need more policing. Please take that money and invest it in the community instead. Don't spend that money locking people up. Please repurpose it as a Center for Wellness and Freedom. Use it for public health. Do not use it for policing. All right, moving on to our emails. To whom it may concern, I am a lifelong Atlantan and current resident of the 5th District. I've attached a 15-second video highlighting why I, along with so many others, am urging you to appropriate the $18 million currently earmarked for the Atlanta City Detention Center instead to care services that our city desperately needs. It is a moral outrage for the city to be wasting resources on carceral solutions that have been repeatedly proved ineffective when what we really need is robust investment in public health. Please move that money from Cuffs to Care and prove that you represent the needs of those who you were elected to serve and whose taxes pay your salaries. The people of Atlanta are sick and tired and need help. Respectfully yours, Jake Krabowski. Ms. Kempson-Wright, has this video been played as part of the others, or do we need to play this video? All right, that video has already been played as one of the videos that we've seen. Hi, my name is Richard Marrero. I work in the film industry here in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm a resident, and I remain hopeful for this city. I was so proud to hear that the Atlanta City Detention Center was slated for closure. With COVID, a city in crisis, and a $40 million deficit, the city should not be wasting $18 million of taxpayer money to operate a jail that's almost empty. Employees of ACDC should be moved to other departments where they can learn skills for future jobs and truly be of service to our city during this crisis. Please move $18 million from Cuffs to Care and protect the safety and wellness of all Atlantans. I've attached a video to be played at the budget meeting here. Thank you for your time. We've played that. Hello, attached, you will find a video of why I'm advocating for the closure of the Atlanta City Detention Center. As a reverend local nonprofit leader and resident of this city, I know the benefits of this community-based care models compared to institutions like the ACDC. The $18 million in question should be allocated to programs that promote public health and safety. Don't let this failed institution be a burden on our budget. I'm pleading with you, do the right thing. Sincerely, Reverend Lindsay Huggins. Hi, my name is Daniel Bass, and I live in District 5. I'm emailing to ask you to move $18 million in the city's proposed budget out of the Atlanta City Detention Center. With the COVID crisis, the city facing a $40 million deficit should not be wasting $18 million of taxpayer money to operate a jail that's mostly empty and already slated for closure. Employees of ACDC should be moved to other departments where they can learn skills for future jobs and truly be of service to our city during this crisis. Move $18 million from Cuffs to Care and protect the safety and wellness of all Atlantans. Thank you, Daniel Bass. Dear Council President Moore and Council members Baroque, Westmoreland, Dickens, and Bond, my name is Nina Dutton, and I live in District 2. Today I'm emailing to ask that the City Council move $18 million in the city's proposed budget out of the Atlanta City Detention Center. The city should not be wasting $18 million of taxpayer money to operate a jail that's mostly empty and already slated for closure. These funds could be spent in numerous ways to benefit our community: local health clinics, child and elder care, sustainable food sources, COVID-19 emergency relief, energy efficient and self-sufficiency at the block or neighborhood level, and more. Employees of ACDC should be moved to other departments where they can learn skills for future jobs and truly be of service to our city during the COVID-19 crisis and beyond. It's time to move $18 million from Cuffs to Care and protect the safety and wellness of all Atlantans. Please feel free to contact me if you would like to discuss this topic further. Thank you and take care, Nina Dutton. Dear City Council members, I am writing to add my voice to the thousands, urging you to take immediate action to finally close the city's extra jail and redirect the $18 million in the proposed 2020-21 city budget to protect the health and wellness of all Atlantans. In a time of public health crisis and a loss of millions to the city's revenue, it's unconscionable for the city of Atlanta to spend $18 million to continue to operate a jail that sits mostly empty and is already slated for closure and repurposing. More now than ever, we must put an end to locking people in cages for petty offenses such as jaywalking and disorderly conduct, wasting desperately needed resources, criminalizing people for being poor and making us all less safe. We ask that you take immediate action to, 1, zero out the fiscal year 21 budget for the Department of Corrections and announce a date certain for the jail's closure. 2, retrain and deploy current ADOC employees to another city department to do the admirable and future-building work of community-based care. The time is now. The city's commitment to close and repurpose the jail could not be reconciled with allocating millions of dollars to its operations in the coming year. In the time of a global pandemic, smart cities like Atlanta must shift resources away from the institutions that have failed to increase public safety and have now become potential super spreader sites. Instead, the city should prioritize the community-based care and support we have always known to be the basis of true public health and safety. Sincerely, Jessica Young. All right. Hello, my name is Asia Anderson, and I live in District 2, East Cobb. I'm emailing to ask you to move $18 million in the city's proposed budget out of the Atlanta City Detention Center. With the COVID crisis, the city faces a $40 million deficit and should not be wasting $18 million of taxpayer money to operate a jail that's mostly empty and already slated for closure. Employees of ACDC should be moved to other departments where they can learn skills for future jobs and truly be of service to our city during this crisis. Move $18 million from cuffs to care and protect the safety and wellness of all Atlantans. Asia Anderson. I live in Councilwoman Jennifer Ide's district and am writing today to ask you to move $18 million in the city's proposed budget out of the Atlanta City Detention Center. Please take this important step to help our city move forward on a progressive path that prioritizes people's well-being and supports the most vulnerable in our community. With the COVID crisis, the city faces a $40 million deficit and should not be wasting $18 million of taxpayer money to operate a jail that's mostly empty and already slated for closure. Employees of ACDC should be moved to other departments where they can learn skills for future, I apologize, I lost my spot. They can learn skills for future jobs and truly be of service to our city during this crisis. Move $18 million from cuffs to care and protect the safety and wellness of all Atlantans. Thank you, Robin Deutsch-Edwards. I'm a resident of Reynoldstown, Cabbagetown area represented by Natalie Archibald. I have the following request for the City of Atlanta budget. Move the $18 million that is allocated for the Atlanta Detention Center and repurpose it into a Center for Wellness in response to COVID-19. We currently have a public health crisis, and it's unacceptable for our city to be allocating funds for a prison that sits mostly empty and is slated for closure. Move money slated for use for the police and detention center and instead put it into wellness programs and social services. We need to prioritize healing and helping the community, not funding a police force and prison system which is being used against its own people. We do not have to put our money into these systems. We can spend more money on health care and social services which heal and rehabilitate our community. On certain emergency calls, we could be dispatching social service workers instead of police. We need to reallocate our funding and consider these types of programs. Rachel Jeff. Hi, my name is Samantha Marcus, and I live in District 2. I'm emailing to ask you to move $18 million in the city's proposed budget out of the Atlanta City Detention Center. With the COVID crisis, the city faces a $40 million deficit and should not be wasting $18 million of taxpayer money to operate a jail that's mostly empty and is already slated for closure. Employees of ACDC should be moved to other departments where they can learn skills for future jobs and truly be of service to our city during this crisis. Move $18 million from cuffs to care and protect the safety and wellness of Atlantans. Hi, my name is Kayla Goldstein, and I live in District 6. I'm emailing to ask you to move $18 million in the city's proposed budget out of the Atlanta City Detention Center. With the COVID crisis, the city faces a $40 million deficit and should not be wasting $18 million of taxpayer money to operate a jail that's mostly empty and already slated for closure. Employees of ACDC should be moved to other departments where they can learn skills for future jobs and truly be of service to our city during this crisis. Move $18 million from cuffs to care and protect the safety and wellness of all Atlantans. I'm a resident of East Atlanta Village in District 5, represented by Natalie Archibald. I have the following request for the City of Atlanta budget. Move the $18 million that's allocated for the Atlanta Detention Center and repurpose it into a Center for Wellness in response to COVID-19. We currently have a public health crisis, and it's unacceptable for our city to be allocating funds for a prison that sits mostly empty and is slated for closure. Move money slated for use for the police and detention centers and instead put it into wellness programs and social services. We need to prioritize healing and helping the community, not funding a police force and prison system, which is being used against its own people. We do not have to put our money into these systems. We can spend more money on health care and social services, which heal and rehabilitate our community. On certain emergency calls, we could be dispatching social service workers instead of police. We need to reallocate our funding and consider these types of programs. Thank you, Sarah Newman Patterson. Hi there, my name is Kathy, and I live in District 6. I'm emailing to ask you to move $18 million in the city's proposed budget out of the Atlanta City Detention Center. With the COVID crisis, the city faces a $40 million deficit and should not be wasting $18 million of taxpayer money to operate a jail that's mostly empty and already slated for closure. Employees of ACDC should be moved to other departments where they can learn life skills for future jobs and truly be of service to our city during this crisis. Move $18 million from cuffs to care and protect the safety and wellness of all Atlantans. Thank you. All the best. Cassie. Hi, my name is Melanie Flores, and I live in the 34th Congressional District. I'm emailing to ask you to move $18 million from the city's proposed budget out of the Atlanta Detention Center. With the COVID crisis, the city faces a $40 million deficit. It should not be wasting $18 million of taxpayer money to operate a jail that's mostly empty and already slated for closure. Employees of ACDC should be moved to other departments so they can learn life skills for future jobs and truly be of service to our city during this crisis. Move $18 million from cuffs to care and protect the safety and wellness of all Atlantans. Hashtag ATL budget. Hashtag communities over cages. Hashtag close the jail ATL. Hello, I write to urge all city council members to vote to zero out the $18 million allocated to the Atlanta City Detention Center for fiscal year 2021. I believe that the city must prioritize the needs of the community and carry out the city's commitment to close ACDC for good. Please view the video attached to zero out the budget for ACDC. Thank you, Van Quinn. I believe that video was played. The Atlanta Detention Center serves no purpose in our city. It sits as an empty building and it should be ensured that it does not return to its former operation. Atlanta should be a city that sets the tone for the rest of the world, and organizers have done the work to ensure its closure and repurposing as a city for wellness and freedom. This initiative should continue to honor the hard work of those who have ensured that folk are not penalized for poverty and continue to be locked away awaiting trial because they cannot afford bail. If the city is as great as many claim it to be, it should live up to those ideals, and council should repurpose this building for the care of its citizens who have long suffered from poverty and police brutality. Please close the detention center and move these funds from cuffs to care. If you refuse, it shows that Atlanta does not care about its citizens and only cares about advancing capitalistic gains, forsaking its own citizens. In Tavius Franklin. Dear Councilwoman Ide, my name is Sarah, and I live at Council District 6 in the Virginia Highland neighborhood. In light of recent events of police brutality and the militarized police president protests, I'm urging the City of Atlanta to divest from police and punishment and invest in community care. I'd like to see the City of Atlanta dramatically decrease the amount of money budgeted for the police in 2021. This money should be rerouted to fund social services, housing, health, food, and community building programs, especially in light of COVID-19. In addition, why is $18 million being budgeted to the Atlanta City Detention Center, a building that's slated to be closed and is almost empty? That $18 million would be better suited going to programs that invest in community and health and safety of Black Atlantans. Thank you, Sarah. Hi, my name is Yvonne, and I live in District 6. I'm emailing to ask you to move $18 million from the city's proposed budget out of the Atlanta City Detention Center. With the COVID crisis, the city faces a $40 million deficit and should not be wasting $18 million of taxpayer money to operate a jail that's mostly empty and already slated for closure. Employees of ACDC should be moved to other departments where they can learn skills for future jobs and truly be of service to our city during this crisis. Move $18 from cuffs to care and protect the safety and wellness of Atlantans. Dear Jennifer Ide, my name is Cara Curtis, and I live in District 6. I'm emailing to ask you to support moving the $18 million in the city's proposed budget out of the Atlanta City Detention Center. With the COVID crisis, the city faces a $40 million deficit and should not be wasting $18 million of taxpayer money to operate a jail that's mostly empty and already slated for closure. Employees of ACDC should be moved to other departments where they can learn skills for future jobs and truly be of service to our city during the crisis. Move $18 million from cuffs to care and protect the safety and wellness of all Atlantans. Sincerely, Cara Curtis. Hi, my name is Caroline Long, and I live in Atlanta District 6. I'm emailing to ask you to move $18 million in the city's proposed budget out of the Atlanta City Detention Center. With COVID crisis, the city faces a $40 million deficit. It should not be wasting $18 million of taxpayer money to operate a jail that's mostly empty and already slated for closure. Employees of ACDC should be moved to other departments where they can learn skills for future jobs and truly be of service to our city during the crisis. Move $18 million from trust to care and protect the safety and wellness of Atlantans. Thank you, Caroline Long. Hi, my name is Quinn, and I live in District 6, and I'm emailing to ask that you move $18 million in the city's proposed budget out of the Atlanta City Detention Center. With the COVID crisis, the city faces a $40 million deficit. Should not be wasting $18 million of taxpayer money to operate a jail that's mostly empty and already slated for closure. Employees of ACDC should be moved to other departments where they can learn skills for future jobs and truly be of service to our city during this crisis. Move $18 million from cuffs to cares and protect the safety and wellness of all Atlantans. I'm emailing to ask you to move $18 million in the city's proposed budget out of the Atlanta City Detention Center. With the COVID crisis, the city faces a $40 million deficit. It should not be wasting $18 million of taxpayer money to operate a jail that's mostly empty and already slated for closure. Employees of ACDC should move to other departments where they can learn skills for future jobs and truly be of service to our city during the crisis. Move the $18 million from cuffs to care and protect the safety and wellness of all Atlantans. Thank you, Andrew Burbach. Dear Councilwoman Ide, I live in your district and I'm writing today to ask you to move $18 million in the city's proposed budget out of the Atlanta City Detention Center. My family appreciated your thoughtful consideration and ultimate support for the elimination of cash bail in Atlanta and ask you to keep helping the city move forward on a progressive path that prioritizes people's well-being and supports the most vulnerable in our community. With the COVID crisis, the city faces a $40 million deficit and should not be wasting $18 million of taxpayer money to operate a jail that's mostly empty and already slated for closure. Employees of ACDC should be moved to other departments where they can learn skills for future jobs, truly be of service to their city during this crisis. Move $18 million from cuffs to care and protect the safety and wellness of all Atlantans. Thank you, Robin Deutsch Edwards. Hi, Jennifer. My name is Wendy Hagenmeyer, and I'm a constituent in Ansley Park, and I'm emailing to ask you to move $18 million in the city's proposed budget out of the Atlanta City Detention Center. With the COVID crisis, the city faces a $40 million deficit and should not be wasting $18 million of taxpayer money to operate a jail that's mostly empty and already slated for closure. Employees of ACDC should be moved to other departments where they can learn skills for future jobs and truly be of service to our city during this crisis. Thank you for considering this request to move the $18 million from cuffs to care and protect the safety and wellness of Atlantans. Wendy. Hi, my name is Jessica Cusick, and I live in District 6. I'm emailing to ask you to move $18 million in the city's proposed budget out of the Atlanta City Detention Center. With the COVID crisis, the city is facing a $40 million deficit and should not be wasting $18 million of taxpayer money to operate a jail that's mostly empty and already slated for closure. Employees of ACDC should be moved to other departments where they can learn skills for future jobs and truly be of service to our city during this crisis. Move $18 million from cuffs to care, protect the safety and wellness of all Atlantans. Respectfully, Reverend Jessica Cusick. 1 minute. That is the end of our text and emails on the Atlanta jail, but we have been receiving some additional comments. Give me 1 second. Let me get to the social media ones and see if there are any social media ones about the jail. And again, thank you for your patience as we work through the technology of this virtual meeting. This is an additional email. I'm a resident of zip code 30329. I have the following request for the City of Atlanta budget. Move the $18 million that's allocated for the Atlanta Detention Center and repurpose it into a center for wellness in response to COVID-19. We currently have a public health crisis, and it is unacceptable for our city to be allocating funds for a prison that sits mostly empty, slated for closure. Move money slated for use for the police and detention centers, and instead put it into wellness programs and social services. We need to prioritize healing and helping the community, not funding a police force and prison system which is being used against its own people. We do not have to put money into these systems. We can spend money on health care and social services which heal and rehabilitate our community. On certain emergency calls, we could be dispatching social service workers instead of police. We need to reallocate our funding and consider these types of programs. Thank you for your consideration, Emmy. I believe that is, okay, one more from Facebook. Natanya Charnell, good evening. I adamantly want to express my concerns about the proposed fiscal year 21 budget, the $18 million for the Atlanta Detention Center, and the completely excessive proposed police budget of over $200 million is unacceptable. The police budget should at least be cut in half. Instead, dollars should be designated to services that actually serve the people. We are living through a pandemic within the COVID-19 pandemic, and funds should be directed at closing the gaps that have existed due to the vast inequities in this city. Defund the police. This is crucial for the city and this country. We must designate at least half of the police budget and the $18 million previously mentioned towards services that serve people and affordable housing. Thank you. Facebook comment from David Cloud. It is time for Atlanta to lead the way. We cannot look back now. Reallocating the $18 million slotted for the jail to strengthen capacity for health and equity is imperative. Time to close the jail and build the community. Let's get at the root cause. Let's make the vision of the city's task force a reality. Hi, my name is Ashka Jani, and I live in the 5th Congressional District of Georgia. I'm emailing to ask you to move $18 million from the city's proposed budget out of the Atlanta City Detention Center. With the COVID crisis, the city faces a $40 million deficit. It should not be wasting $18 million of tax-free money to operate a jail that's mostly empty and already slated for closure. Employees of ACDC should be moved to other departments where they can learn skills for future jobs and surely be of service to our city during this crisis. Move the $18 million from cuts to care and protect the safety and wellness of all Atlantans. Thank you, Ashka Jani. Text messages, a few more. Hi, I'm Rachel. I live in Reynoldstown. Please remove the $18 million allocated for the detention center and use it on health and social service programs to respond to COVID-19. Please reconsider all funding for police and detention programs and how that money could be used instead to put into health and social service programs. And last one, hello, I would love to see a decrease in funding for the police, jails, and prisons. We need more investments in community care. So I'm going to take a pause here. There are more comments about the police budget, but I'm going to ask, now I'm going to turn it over to Joshua Williams and to respond to the comments and questions that have been raised about the fiscal year 21 budget and the allocation to the Department of Corrections and our city jail.
Thank you, Councilmember Odd. I greatly appreciate the opportunity again. As you all know, earlier today, the mayor announced her intention to put forward a budget amendment to establish a new Department of Equity and Wellness and to transfer funding for the corrections employees into this new department. As soon as this budget has effectively gone into place, ISCO will oversee a process to identify where our existing and dedicated corrections employees can be redeployed to other areas of operations as well as community-based priorities across the city, and identify whether further operational savings can be realized within the FY21 budget. As an administration, we believe that this is certainly a better reflection of the mayor's intent and sends a very clear signal to our residents as well as the business owners here in the city of Atlanta that we remain committed to this platform of reform. So with that, Council Member, I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. And I don't know if any of my colleagues would like to make any remarks about these comments or questions raised with regard to the Department of Corrections or jail. Please raise your virtual hand, and I am happy to call on you. All right, I am, give it just another minute. See any city council members. I don't see that. I'm going to go back now to our written questions and comments and focus on the ones that relate to the Atlanta Police Department. All right, these are text messages. Good afternoon. Is the PD being defunded and divested from? I ask that the City of ATL allocate greater funds to support the Citizen Review Board, which investigates police misconduct, and allocate greater funds to training on nonviolent de-escalation techniques and mental health services for officers. I'm going to quickly ask if everybody else would put their phones on mute. There's a little bit of interference in the background. I live in the city of Atlanta, and I insist on defunding police and putting those dollars to restorative use in the community. Hello, for the 2021 budget, I want to see funding for services that build healthier communities and support the disenfranchised, especially in the time of COVID prioritized. Additionally, I'm concerned about the increase in the police budget. How will the council ensure that the funding holds police accountable for their actions? How would the funding for the police address police brutality? Hello, I'm a resident of Atlanta. I'm reaching out in regards to the proposed 2021 budget for Atlanta. I do not believe that police services need $262 million and would like to encourage significant cuts to the budget. That seems extremely excessive in comparison to the $940,940 the Atlanta Citizen Review Board, which investigates police misconduct. Given the things that have come to surface, I believe that way more funds should be invested into investigating police misconduct. There needs to be a much better balance between the two in order for the police to stop abusing their power. Hi, I live in Midtown, and I want to express my dismay at how much money is being allocated toward the police, with comparatively nothing being directed to the review board. I am disgusted and embarrassed for the city that I have come to call home if this is how you protect everyone. Divest in police, invest in black communities. I live in Peachtree Corners, but I work in Atlanta, Georgia. I urge you all to defund the police department, encourage demilitarization. Any funds should be tied to the ability to implement a registry of bad cops, the promise to renegotiate police union contracts, and with protections for officers who whistleblow on bad actors. Also, that community review board needs at least double the funding. Evelyn Hernandez. Hello, I want to make my voice heard regarding this budget. Increase the budget of the Citizen Review Board. Also fund programs for police officers and de-escalation techniques, not only for those in public they are interacting with, but also between officers. Officers can intervene in another officer's action and not have it be looked at as a betrayal by other officers. In summary, increase funding for the Citizen Review Board and non-aggressive training for officers. Any police department should have the citizens acting as oversight on its actions. Thank you, Todd Eastman. Hello. Please do not increase funding in fiscal year 2021 budget. Instead, we need to invest in social programs, mental health outreach, and education. These interventions are more effective and more humane than increasing police presence and power. Thank you, Alexandra W. I hope you are doing well. After reviewing the proposed fiscal year 21 budget for the City of Atlanta, I have a comment about the proposed allocations for the Police Department and the Atlanta Citizen Review Board. In light of recent events, I believe the Citizen Review Board plays a critical piece in eradicating the police brutality against the black community that's plaguing our country. Per the policy recommendations from Campaign Zero, in order to have a truly effective Citizen Review Board, they must be funded at an amount no less than 5% of the Police Department budget. The fiscal year 21 proposed budget indicates that the Atlanta Citizen Review Board budget is only 0.04% of the proposed Police Department budget. The Police Department is also seeing a 5.9% budget increase compared to only 2.5% for the Citizen Review Board. I'd like to recommend re-examining the budget allocations for the Police Department to appropriate more money towards the Atlanta Citizen Review Board so that this entity can truly accomplish its mission and begin to solve our police brutality issue. At the very least, I believe the proportionate budget increase for both entities should be the same. Can the city identify ways to transfer money allocated for the Police Department to the Citizen Review Board, or provide a more detailed breakdown on how the Police Department funds are distributed so the public can better understand this discrepancy? Thank you, Rosalind Teo. Good afternoon. As a resident of Atlanta, I would like to ask the City Council to entirely defund the Police Department and reallocate the funds to education, homeless services, and child welfare. Thank you, Christian Earl. My name is Cece Bailey, and I'm a citizen living in Atlanta. I'm curious to know why we plan to increase spending on police departments, especially when all current evidence shows they are not held accountable or prosecuted when they abuse citizens. Will any of the spending go directly to bias training in Atlanta police departments? Please tell us why funding for police departments will be prioritized over infrastructure, funding healthcare services to residents, or public housing. Thank you. What is the reasoning of allocating such a disproportionate amount of the city's budget to the police department instead of community services? Is there discourse on diverting funds away from law enforcement in lieu of recent events? Irina Dalatikina, constituent from District 2. Hi, my name is Lindsay Calhoun, and I'm a resident of Midtown Atlanta. I'm asking to call an emergency council meeting and deny the mayor's proposed budget. I would like to redirect money away from Atlanta PD into these social services: subsidized housing, free health care, improving the condition of children, elderly, disabled, and the homeless, food subsidies, and after-school programs. Hi, my name is Divine, and I live in Midtown. I'm asking you all to redirect money away from the Atlanta Police Department to these social services: subsidized housing, free health care, improving the living condition of children, the elderly, the disabled, and the homeless, food subsidies, and after-school programs. There is no need for a $377,000 armored truck in South Fulton's PD, but there is a need for food, free care, sidewalks that are not crumbling, and are wheelchair accessible, and child care. Thank you. Have a blessed day. Greetings. As a citizen in Atlanta, Georgia, I am concerned about the proposed budget for the Atlanta Police Department. This amount of funding seems to be counterproductive due to the lack of implementation of citizen demands for culturally sensitive training, psychological assessment demands, etc. Would this funding include a mandate for the police department to allocate funds for the purpose of such? Thank you, Michaela Williamson. Dear City Council members, the budget allocated for the Department of Police is millions of dollars too high already without the proposed increase. That money would be much better spent on health care, affordable housing initiatives, community services, and support for the unemployed. We need tangible services to improve the lives of citizens. I'll keep this short, but my point remains. I support a decrease in the police budget. Thank you, Kelly Warrington. Please consider allocating resources away from the police department budget, which has seen an increase in their overall budget year over year. Their share of the annual budget dwarfs all remaining categories and departments. Instead, invest the city's money in places that can actively do good for its citizens and allow for an even better quality of life of our communities. Imagine the differences that could be made by extending a hand to the people of the city rather than a boot. Spencer A. Perry, District 8. Dear City Council, staff, and elected officials, I'm concerned about the large increase in funding for the City of Atlanta Police Department proposed for the fiscal year 21 budget. Specifically, what demonstrable increase in effectiveness will this have? What was the decision-making process behind the increase when improved social services can often be just as effective at encouraging public safety and improving quality of life? Thank you for the opportunity to comment. Nick Johnson. Hello, my name is Cynthia Tawadros, and I'm an Atlanta resident. Looking at the summary of the operating budget by department in the proposed budget document, what is the reason for a 5.9% increase in funding for the Department of Police, especially given the shortcomings of police departments highlighted with the current protest events? I believe that a budget is a reflection of our values. The city should fund what its residents value most. How is this budget reflecting the nation's current calls for radical change? I look forward to hearing the answers to this tonight. Thank you. To Cynthia Tawadros, apologies if I have messed up the pronunciation, MTH. Dear City Council members, the budget allocated for the Department of Police is millions of dollars too high already without the proposed increase. That money would be better spent on health care, affordable housing initiatives, community services, support for the unemployed. We need tangible services to improve the lives of citizens. I'll keep this short, but my point remains. I support a decrease in police budget. Thank you, Caitlin Citro. All right, from Facebook. I work in downtown Atlanta. I care about the city. More policing is clearly not helping us. When you vote on the 2021 budget, you need to trust in the community. Community leaders keep saying that community-based care and support is the best way to help the underprivileged of Atlanta. Trust in SNAP and RJAC. Instead of allocating millions of dollars to the Atlanta City Detention Center, invest in the community. More policing has led us here. It's not working. Invest in helping the communities provide better health and safety options. Brandy Blake. Let me move over to our social media. This is from Twitter. I'm a resident of Midtown. I'm asking that you redirect money away from Atlanta PD into social services such as free health care, child care, and housing for the poor and homeless. From Facebook by Irina Dolo Chacuna, constituent of District 2, I would like to urge the city to divest critical funding from the APD and invest in social services such as affordable housing, equitable health, and environmental resources, and equal access to quality education, particularly in underserved communities. In addition, funding from miscellaneous fines and fees should be directed into funding pools for alternative solutions such as pre-arrest diversion, social welfare, and anti-recidivism programs. I am coming up on my 5th year in Atlanta, and I love the city and its people. I wanted to offer my opinion on the city's budget priorities for the upcoming year. 1, the Atlanta Police Department should be defunded or have their funding severely cut. As the past several days have shown, police hurt citizens, routinely abuse their power, and are often largely unchecked by the general public. 2, these funds could be better used to housing homeless populations when they are often criminalized due to their lack of economic status. 3, these funds could also be used to better transportation in Atlanta. The sidewalks, not to mention the bike lanes, are pitiful compared to other American cities. Low-income people and people without a car have to struggle with last-mile options even when MARTA gets them within the general distance of their destination. 4, there should be no tax breaks for housing corporate buildings, including the Gulch, and all housing built should require 25% allocation to low-income families with rent-controlled units. It would be a shame to see this working-class city go the way of New York, where only rich out-of-towners can afford to live within the city, which is slowly being built by the working class. This includes redlining the Gulch. To create another private property that citizens are only allowed to access part-time would be a grave mistake on the part of the city. 5, Atlanta should have more protection of historical places, including commitments from developers to keep the historical markings of buildings they plan to redevelop. Please take these into consideration. For too long, it feels like the needs of ordinary citizens have been pushed aside in favor of making this place comfortable for the rich and corporations. Thank you for reading. Please listen to the concerns of myself and other Atlanta citizens. Adam Bernard, Atlanta Midtown resident. This is an email. Hi, I have a question about the 2021 budget for tonight's meeting. Why is the budget for Department of Police Services increasing by more than $12 million when so many other necessary departments are decreasing? In the next fiscal year, Atlanta residents will be heavily impacted by the pandemic and resulting job loss. Can't some of this money go towards affordable housing, public health initiatives, and educational programs instead? Thanks, Bailey. An email, good afternoon. I will be tuning into the virtual meeting on the budget later today, and I had a question I would like addressed. Given the increasing amount of research that shows that the best way to decrease crime is not to hire more police, but to improve social conditions, and given the recent actions of police officers unleashing completely overboard reactions to peaceful protesters using military-grade equipment that is unnecessary and unnecessarily expensive, would you consider reallocating the $14 million increase to APD in the budget instead to programs that improve conditions for Atlanta community members, such as affordable housing, mental health services, educational programming, public health initiatives, and workforce development? Thank you for your time. Mary Koenig, MSW, MPH. Another email. Hello, I have a question regarding the Atlanta budget. Why is the police budget so high? As current events are unfolding, it is clear to me that a militarized and well-funded police force is nothing but a danger to its citizens. I'm afraid. Thank you, Kaylee Turvo, 30324, citizen of Atlanta. Let me see. Another email. Please do not approve the proposed funding for the Atlanta Police Department. Please defund this department and work with communities to find better uses for this money. Uses lift people up and improve lives rather than perpetuate a system that commits violence against black citizens. Thank you, Molly McRedmond. Another email. My name is Rachel Klicka, a resident of Fulton County in Atlanta. I stand against the proposed increase of $217 million for the Department of Police Services. Allocating those proposed funds towards community development, public education, and aid to low-income residents would serve our city in a more impactful way and would address root issues in our society. Thank you, Rachel Klicka. Another email. Why is the Department of Police Services allocated more than twice the budget of the next highest line item? Please reallocate these funds to the Department of Transportation and the Department of Public Defender. Sincerely, Catherine Mooney. I am a resident of Atlanta at 709 Killian Street, Southeast in Grant Park, and I have a question regarding the budget for fiscal year 2021. In light of the pandemic and resulting job loss, why is the budget for the Department of Police Services increasing by more than $14 million when the budgets of so many other important departments are decreasing? Has the council considered reallocating any of these funds towards public programs that will more directly benefit Atlanta citizens? such as affordable housing, public health initiatives, and educational programming. Thank you, Allison Brady. Email, question for the City Council. Amongst all the unrest surrounding police brutality and after many Atlanta citizens witnessed the assaults of Messiah Young and Tanaya Pilgrim on live television last Saturday night, how does the City Council explain the 6% increase in funding for the police? Surely there are other ways our city needs them, particularly to address the homelessness in Atlanta, our healthcare systems and hospitals, and small businesses that are suffering through a global pandemic. Please answer this question, as many are discontent with the mayor's handling of the protests, feeling much more harm is being caused with an increase in militarized police protests, harming protesters who are exercising their First Amendment rights. Thank you, Aja Arnold. From Facebook, a comment by Catherine Loftus. Good evening. I chose to move to Atlanta after graduating from undergrad and have come to call Atlanta my home. Recently, I've become concerned with the actions of the police towards the citizens they have sworn to protect and serve. I do not think their budget should be north of $200 million, while their review board sits under $1 million, especially if they are failing in their obligations under international law to facilitate the right to peaceful protest. As noted by Rachel Ward, the National Director of Research at Amnesty International USA, and myself, seeing them refuse to help a young girl who was bleeding from her skull and needed medical attention at yesterday's protest. Please take into consideration not just the officers in uniform, but the citizens that make up the community they are obliged to serve. Thank you. All right, this is from another text. We feel strongly that funds should be reallocated from the police department towards more community-oriented initiatives and projects. Things like revamped homeless shelters, community job fairs, improvement of infrastructure, youth outreach, and other similar prospects would serve as a more enriching and useful allocation of funds. Police brutality is the product of a force that should not exist, and its creation stems from white supremacy. To prioritize the safety of the citizens of a predominantly black Atlanta, what are the steps the city will take to permanently defund the Atlanta Police Department? Increase police funding for the city of Atlanta, not using the city's funds in light of all the things. Let me start over on that. Increase police funding for the city of Atlanta, exclamation point, not using the city's funds in light of all the things that have been happening, exclamation point. Prioritize alleviate homelessness. Next, as a resident, I do not want to fund the police and would like that money to go towards health and public services. Thank you. Next, hello, I would love to see a decrease in funding for the police, jails, and prisons. We need more investments in community care. So I believe I have captured all of the questions and comments that pertain to the police department. I'm going to turn it over to the administration, Joshua Williams, and any of my colleagues on City Council would like to respond to any of those comments. Please send me a message and I will get you in line. So, Mr. Williams.
Thank you again, Councilwoman. I appreciate the opportunity. The FY21 budget, proposed budget, seeks to maintain service delivery across all areas of city operations. APD's budget specifically is proportionate to its staffing level, the fact that it is a 24/7 operation, as well as the breadth of activities that it's responsible for. More specifically, however, the budget increase is reflective of pay raises that were agreed upon in 2018, in addition to funding for additional body-worn cameras, as well as associated maintenance and video storage to support our commitment to transparency and accountability. I would like to turn it over to Deputy Chief Sherbaum, who I believe is also on the call, to outline some of the training resources and other support for cultural sensitivity training, as well as psychological assessment for our officers. Deputy Chief, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Thank you. This is Deputy Chief Sherbaum with the Atlanta Police Department. Clearly, training is very important to the city and the Atlanta Police Department as far as preparing our officers to police in a diverse cultural community. The Atlanta Police Department, more than doubles the training requirements that is set by the state of Georgia. We are proud that we were one of the 16 key departments identified by President Obama's Justice Department administration that highlighted our training program when they identified the best training practices for American law enforcement. We do focus heavily on sensitivity training, implicit bias training, de-escalation, as well as ensuring our officers are prepared to police in a community that is diverse, both as it relates to race, culture, as well as sexual orientation. One of the tenets of our training program is to emphasize the historical trust that has broken down between the public and law enforcement cases. And so we emphasize that by taking all of our recruits to the Center for Civil and Human Rights to learn about the injustices that have occurred by law enforcement that has broken that trust and ensure that it's a daily commitment by our men and women in law enforcement to earn the trust, retain the trust, and ensure that we are policing in a fair and equitable manner. Our training is not only at the recruit level, but it is adapted each year to make sure that our training is focusing on equipping our officers to stay abreast of the latest developments, the latest training, and the latest abilities to police equitably within our communities. Those hours do exceed the state's required hours significantly, and then we also are committed to continue that as necessary to ensure that we are policing effectively in the community. And I will take any questions I would have from the council.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. Lastly, I would like to also quickly add that under the proposed budget, the administration is seeking to create the new Department of Grants and Community Development, which is funded in a combination of both general fund dollars as well as grant-funded dollars to provide social services and support for most of our disadvantaged citizens. We're also planning to leverage a significant portion of the city's CARES Act funding to increase our capacity to deliver these services over the next fiscal year to support rental assistance, small business support, as well as food delivery and other priority actions. Councilwoman, I will turn it back over to you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Williams and Deputy Chief. A few of these comments and questions did go to the budget for the Atlanta Citizens Review Board. I don't believe we have anybody from the ACRB on tonight, but I did want to acknowledge that we had questions about their budget. They have given their budget presentation to City Council, even though almost all departments took a cut this year, Citizens Review Board didn't. I will commit to circling back to them to make sure that they feel that they have a sufficient budget, and we can have that discussion amongst council, but I don't believe that we have anybody from the Citizens Review Board here tonight. I have gotten some questions, comments over the last few days about Atlanta needs to establish a Citizen Review Board. We've had one. We had one since for many years since the tragic Katherine Johnson shooting, and it's a valuable asset for the city, and I will circle back with them and just double check, with them that they feel like they have what they need in this year's budget. Any colleagues who want to, who have questions for Mr. Williams or the Deputy Chief, or have any remarks on the public comment on the Atlanta Police Department? All right, and I will just briefly respond. And, this is a difficult time. Those of us that have been on the streets or been watching it on the news, and I know there's a lot of anger and emotion coming from a lot of different directions. But I have complete faith in our Chief of Police, Erica Shields. She runs a strong, good department. We have to have a police department in the city of Atlanta. And so I'm going to reflect on and take these comments and concerns to heart, more so than eliminating a police department. I think of looking for places in our budget and working with the administration, for example, with what Mr. Williams just raised of our new Department of Grants, to look at places that we can strengthen our community programs. We have, thankfully, some significant federal funding coming in for the COVID response. And so we absolutely need to address many of the issues that were raised in these comments. But we also do need to support our law enforcement officers. And the budget does reflect a commitment that we've made to them legislatively to bring them to par based on a study so that they are paid at a market rate. And I truly believe that, paying our officers adequately is what we need to do to have them around, to have a professional police force. I'm happy for, any constituents who've called and written in who want to discuss it further with me to have those discussions. But I just did want to say that I think that Chief Shields is an excellent police chief, and we have an excellent force, and we're always looking for ways to make it better and stronger, but we have made a commitment to them on their pay going forward, which is a lot of what you're seeing in the budget for the fiscal year 21. All right, Councilmember Justin Hillis would like to speak, so you've got the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairwoman Hyde, and thank you to the members of the administration. Just wanted to echo Councilmember Hyde's comments. I have full faith in our excellent police chief, Erica Shields, and the men and women of APD. A very diverse police department, has already been highlighted, very well trained. We're aggressively deploying body-worn cameras so we can hold officers accountable. I can speak personally on issues that have been brought to my attention of officer wrongdoing, and I brought that to the chief, and in one instance, someone was immediately fired. So we are holding our officers accountable. And to that point, for all the people that provided these comments today, I'd really like to know how many of those people have went to a Fulton County meeting or addressed our district attorney, who, when I was the chair of the Public Safety Committee, we found out through one of our deputy chiefs at the time that our Chief Shields, and going back to Chief Turner, had sent over 20 cases in the past 3 to 4 years over to our district attorney. He let them sit on his desk. After many meetings with him, we were given a cold shoulder, rescheduled. We never got a meeting. So part of holding our officers accountable, again, I'm confident our police chief does that, and she will continue to do that. But we also need to look, it is the responsibility of the district attorney to bring charges against officers who do wrongdoing. And again, there needs to be some change there. So I just wanted to get that out there. Thank you, Chairwoman Hyde, and thank you, Deputy Chief Sherbaum and COO Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Hillis. If there's nothing else, I'm going to now turn to our comments and questions that are focused on housing issues in the city. So, hello there. I support City Roots ATL, and I think that it's imperative for the flourishing of our city to include the Housing Opportunity Bond in the 2021 fiscal year budget. I understand that COVID-19 has impacted many things financially, but I think our low-income Atlanta neighbors should be prioritized because of the way COVID-19 and resulting unemployment has disproportionately affected them. Please include the planned $100 million, if not the $200 million originally allocated to address the low-income housing crisis. As our city continues to grow and develop, we must consider promoting fair and equitable housing for our residents. This is especially important for the use of the city's public land surrounding the upcoming Westside Reservoir Park that will inevitably push out our poorer neighbors if we do not address this issue now. Thank you for your service to the city, and thank you for choosing to be leaders who speak for the poor. Laura Charette. Hello, I support City Roots ATL, and I think that it's imperative for the flourishing of our city to include the Housing Opportunity Bond in the 2021 fiscal year budget. I understand that COVID-19 has impacted many things financially, Oh, I think that was the same one. Apologies. All right. Good evening. I stand with City Weeks ATL to demand that more be done to assist low-income housing in Atlanta. Prior to the COVID-19 crisis, the city was planning to issue a housing opportunity bond in the amount of $200 million, part of which would have increased Atlanta's low-income housing stock. That housing opportunity was struck from the budget after the pandemic began, even though our low-income communities are being hit now more than ever with challenges. We need this housing opportunity bond to be reinstated into the fiscal year 2021 budget. Please make this reinstatement in order to support Atlanta communities. Thank you, Kaylin Krieger. Apologies if I didn't get the pronunciation right. To whom it may concern, I support City Roots ATL, and I think it's imperative for the flourishing of our city to include the housing opportunity bond in the 21 fiscal year budget. I understand that COVID-19 has impacted many things financially, but I think that our low-income Atlanta neighbors should be prioritized because of the way COVID-19 and the resulting unemployment has disproportionately affected them. Please include the planned $100 million, about the $200 million originally allocated to address the low-income housing crisis. As our city continues to grow and develop, we must consider promoting fair and equitable housing for our residents. This is especially important for the use of the city's public land surrounding the upcoming Westside Reservoir Park that will inevitably push out our poorer neighbors if we do not address this issue. Now, thank you for your service to our city, and thank you for choosing to be leaders who speak for the poor. Ashley Sagatis. All right. I support City Roots ATL, and I think it's imperative for the flourishing of our... This is the same comment we just heard, but it's also from Kristen Palmeris. Same comment we just heard above. All right, let me see social media if we have questions about the housing bond. There was one I read earlier that had several parts that asked about using funds for housing homeless populations. That was part of Adam Renard's comment. I believe, maybe one more minute, let me just see. I believe those are all of the comments and questions about the status of the housing bond. And in the voicemails, there had been a question about the status of the housing bonds as well. So, Mr. Williams, I know that the mayor spoke of this a little bit this morning, so maybe you could just provide a response on what the administration's thoughts are on the housing bond, considering our financial situation.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. As you know, the affordable housing focus has certainly been a major part of the mayor's focus and priorities. She ran on this specific priority as part of her campaign. And this issue, quite frankly, remains a top priority for the mayor and her administration. I do want to take a quick moment to thank our Chief Housing Officer, Terry Lee, for her dedication and hard work in leading our affordable housing effort as we continue our commitment to investing $1 billion in affordable housing. As much as the administration would like to move forward with the affordable housing bond, we do not feel that in our current financial posture that we're in today, that we are able to do so. And as such, the mayor has discussed earlier today that we will be looking to pause on issuing that bond at this time, given the fact that we're having to consider $37 million from reserves to balance the budget. We need to be very thoughtful that we can focus on finding further savings now to support the work that we need to do, allow for more data to come in that will give us a better sense of the shape of the recovery of the economy, as well as keep pushing to close the gap between our revenues and expenses as we move forward. And then with the expectation, of course, that we will pick this up as soon as we have that confidence in the data to be able to sustain the effort, given that it will be an additional 30-year obligation to the general fund. Our hope and our desire is that this exercise and this effort will commence sooner than later. And certainly once we're able to get that additional data and have a bit more clarity around where the shape of the economy will be, we will certainly bring that back for the council to continue along this work that we have committed to, specifically related to affordable housing in and throughout the city of Atlanta.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Any city council members who would like to speak to the housing bond questions and comments? All right, I am going to move forward. And we have sort of covered the largest, topics of areas, and now we do have a number of other individual questions. So this was a text message. What percentage of COVID-19 relief funds were allocated for micro ATL support services to small businesses? Last year, $10,000 was approved to support 60 business owners. Can this allocation be increased per our COVID-19 grant submission of $100,000 for businesses this budget year? This is a text message from the Georgia Micro Enterprise Network Executive Director Elizabeth Wilson.
Council member, yes, ma'am. With that, I will turn it over to our Deputy Chief Operating Officer, Mr. John Keene, who has done a remarkable job to lead an effort to identify how we will work collaboratively with council and others to utilize our CARES Act funding in support of our COVID-19 funding. Mr. Keene, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Joshua. Thank you, Chairwoman Ide. As you all know, the allocations for the $88.4 million in coronavirus relief funds are currently being discussed as part of the legislative process. Those allocations are not final. Small business grants is an eligible category that was proposed to receive funding as part of the initial proposed allocation. And the allocations will be discussed again in the upcoming FEC meeting on June 10th. I do expect that small business grants will continue to be a significant priority for these funds moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Keene. I just want to note we've also been joined by Councilmember Marcy Overstreet since we did roll call. All right, moving on to the next question. What will the city do to prevent cuts to and increase funding in human services that improve the quality of life for our most disadvantaged citizens? Will funding decrease to reflect the shortcomings in police accountability? If not, how will department funds be allocated to increase accountability, providing intensive trainings, and supporting community coalition building? We've addressed some of the APD part, but let's address the funding for human services that improve the quality of life for disadvantaged citizens.
Thank you again, Council Member. Just as I mentioned earlier about the establishment of the Department of Grants and Community Development, certainly we will continue to have a very deliberate and thoughtful strategy and focus in providing social services and support in this specific area. I will ask if Mr. John Keene has any other areas of discussion that he would like to add as well.
Thank you, Joshua. So I'll just reiterate the creation of the Department of Grants and Community Development integrated the work that the Office of Human Services, which was part of the executive offices, that was integrated into that new department. And, I would just highlight the fact that the general fund is really a small portion of the funds for that department. That department receives and administers the grants on behalf of the city. A significant amount of those grants are focused on public services and human services. And so that department is funded with grant administration dollars and ultimately does work on behalf of the city related to our human and social services And given the fact that the CARES Fund provided additional grant dollars to the city of Atlanta, we are seeing an increased amount of investment being made in human and social services across the city, and the department is a core part of administering those dollars and doing so in a timely manner and an effective manner.
Thank you, Mr. King. All right, as I'm moving on, I'm afraid I skipped over one that was with the other supporters of City Roots ATL. It was the same comment, but I do just want to acknowledge that we had received a comment from Anna Schuler supporting City Roots ATL as well. All right, the next email is an email from Hannah Eisen, I believe it is. It says, thanks for asking for citizen input on the budget. I live on the west side in Oakland City and Councilwoman Winslow's district. In the fiscal year 2021 budget, I'd like to see the items below prioritized. Recreation programs within Parks and Recreation, Atlanta Citizen Review Board to provide robust oversight of the police, the Department of Transportation, specifically improvements that will benefit pedestrians and bicyclists, and the Public Defender's Office. I will quickly just state that Atlanta Citizen Review Board and Public Defender, I don't believe, are on the line. Both of them, even though we were making significant cuts this year, did not have cuts to their budget. So we did protect their budgets from last year. And I will turn over to Mr. Williams if you want to address the recreation programs within Parks and Rec and pedestrian and bicycle improvements for Department of Transportation.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I believe Ms. LaShonda Burke is on the call, and I would ask that she would like to take a few moments to talk specifically about our recreation programs within Parks and Rec. And then again, our Commissioner of Transportation, Mr. Josh Rowland, can specifically talk to any of the specific improvements that will benefit our pedestrians and bicyclists. We'll start with you, Ms. Burke. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you, CEO Augusta Williams and Chair Ms. Jennifer Ide. As it relates to the Department of Parks and Recreation, even though we are having to make some budget adjustments, I am happy to report that none of our services regarding our youth and senior program will be cut as a result of some of our budget adjustments. And the same thing with our park division. We intend to continue to maintaining all of the work that we continue to do in the Office of Parks, which includes mowing, also includes our litter, garbage, and forestry. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Burke. Commissioner Rowland.
Yes, sir. This is Josh Rowland again, the Commissioner of the Department of Transportation. We share that desire to improve the walkability and bikeability of the city as we move into fiscal 21. Some of the highlights from our budget presentation were that we plan to be insourcing many of our services so that we will be able to deliver more sidewalks as well as bike lanes. We have started on the Mayor's Accelerated Plan for Safer Streets. Spring Street is underway, more to come on that plan, which adds 20 miles of bike facility. And lastly, in response to the Mayor's administrative order, we've prepared a plan for approval to look at how we use city streets to promote safer pedestrian access for the essential workers, as well as how do we use public spaces to aid in economic recovery. So much to come from the Department of Transportation when it comes to a focus on pedestrians and as well as cyclists within the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rowland. All right, moving on. To whom this may concern, as the Atlanta City Council goes into the 2021 fiscal year, I believe it is in the best interest to cut each council person's budget in half for 1 year and then reevaluate the financial health of the city. If they are working from home and maintaining social distancing, the large budget for each office is not needed. Lights and air throughout Atlanta City Hall should be kept at a minimum to reduce costs. Services that need to continue to operate would be related to public safety, fire, police, rescue, and corrections, public works, maintaining city parks, and work with the homeless and disabled population. Some of the people that are incarcerated need to help maintain cutting the grass in areas that are maintained and operated by the city and can also help maintain the litter control. In the federal government, we have a criteria when getting contracts from vendors. The main one is getting a vendor that is owned by a disabled vet or woman-owned. This helps put money back into the economy of using locally owned and operated. We also consider putting other services, indoor plant maintenance, into the cleaning contract instead of getting an outside vendor. If I can be of further assistance, please let me know. Thank you, John Bagwell. We did just meet about the Atlanta City Council budget today. We did not cut our budgets in half, but we certainly did participate in the cost cutting that all of the departments are doing. I will say the bulk of our budget goes towards salaries, which is more our staff. It takes many people to run our city council offices and meetings and respond to constituents, but I will certainly share this concern with all of this idea with all of my colleagues. I don't, if other folks can go on mute. If I can get people to go on mute, we're getting a little feedback from somebody. Yep, somebody needs to put their phone on mute, please. A question, I don't know that there are other questions and there are more suggestions. I will ask you, Mr. Williams, just briefly, what are we doing while City Hall is mostly unoccupied to reduce our expenses for a mostly empty building?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And one of the things that we've implemented as we've moved to a telework posture, we've looked at how we can more effectively reduce our utility costs, specifically related to our HVAC, reducing our set points so that we can save energy specifically in that regard, especially as we've entered our hot summer months here. Also, we're looking at the reduction in those costs relative to electricity and many of those other things that have typically driven a large amount of those costs related to those efforts.
All right, thank you. Our next question is going to be about trees and in particular the Tree Trust Fund. On March 18th, the Tree Next Door released the results of a year-long investigation of the $3.3 million misappropriation of funds from the Tree Trust Fund. Both the Department of Planning and Parks have systematically shifted over some employees from their own budgets to the Tree Trust Fund budget from 2009 to 2019. The Tree Next Door has written to all council members and the President of City Council to ask for monitoring of the fiscal year 21 budget to end this practice that is illegal. My question is whether salaries from both the Planning Department and the Parks Department have once again been taken inappropriately from the Tree Trust Fund and are in the draft fiscal budget of 2021. Please review and let me know. Thank you, Stephanie Coffin. Mr. Williams, you there?
I'm sorry, I was coming off mute. I apologize. We have looked at having someone from legal provide some support on that. I believe Mr. Dorsey is on the call from our legal department. Mr. Dorsey, could you provide some insight as it relates to the Tree Trust Fund? Councilmember, I apologize. We assumed that they were on the call.
Okay.
We will make sure that we follow up with a response to that question specifically as soon as possible.
Okay. I'm going to move on to a couple more comments, and if Law can get somebody on, just let me know, and we'll come back to that one. I do know that the Parks budget, departmental budget hearing is tomorrow. It could be answered there if we can't answer it tonight, but if we can get somebody from Law, that would be great. Okay, two more about social services that probably Mr. Keene has answered, but let me just make sure that we get these read in, and if he has any additional comments. To whom it may concern, how will we increase services, housing, food, jobs, healthcare, education, etc., and resources in order to care and provide for our most disenfranchised and vulnerable? In light of recent demands from citizens, will funding come from police budgets? If not, why and where will it come from? Sincerely, Jen Wilkers. And next, hello, my name is Nicole Baker, a citizen of Atlanta, and I'm curious as to what will the city do to prevent cuts and increase funding in human services that improve the quality of life for our most disadvantaged citizens? Will funding decrease to reflect the shortcomings in police accountability? If not, how will department funds be allocated to increase accountability, provide intensive trainings, and supporting community coalition building? Thank you, and I look forward to hearing these answers this evening. I don't know if Mr. Williams, you want to add, you or Mr. King want to add anything to your previous remarks on those topics?
No, ma'am, I don't have any additional things to add. Mr. King, would you have any additional comments at this time?
I will just reinforce these are priorities for the mayor, and we do expect, given the increase in funding that the city has received related to the CARES Act, that there will be additional investment in these areas, both in terms of grants as well as through the coronavirus relief funds that the city received, and that will go into many of the areas that the person mentioned related to housing, rental assistance, small business support, food delivery, and other priorities related to human and social services.
Thank you, Mr. King. All right, next comment. First, is there a more detailed budget document available than the one online? I read the 650-page document last night, but was left with questions. For example, I see on page 145 the budget for City Council, approximately $12 million, mostly personnel. Where do I find the details for each individual council office? For example, I know many things are funded through the various council carry-forward accounts to fund district projects, but there's no information I could find on that. There's also no information on the current impact fee revenues, trust fund balances, nor proposed project spends for those funds. In addition, I call on the City of Atlanta to fully fund and rapidly build already planned bicycle pedestrian projects with community support and to prioritize first and last mile connections for those who continue to rely on transit, especially frontline and essential workers. While I strongly support the creation of the tactical urbanism permit, there needs to be grant funds in place for lower income communities. Otherwise, it'll just exacerbate the existing divides within our cities, with wealthy neighborhoods self-funding safety improvements while poor neighborhoods continue to face health and safety concerns. Equity needs to be considered throughout this budget process. Beth Nathan Chubb. I will quickly address, I'm impressed with this citizen that 650 pages of budget document wasn't, and he wanted more after that. So you can always make an Open Records Act request for any other documents that you may be interested in. I will say for City Council, many City Council members make their budget information, their office budget information available online, but it is a public record that can be requested through the City Council Open Records custodian. If you go to the City Council website, you can do that, and that would provide some information about how each City Council member does spend their funds. I don't know if Mr. Williams, you or somebody from Finance can answer how you find additional information out about impact fees and trust fund balances.
Yes, ma'am. I'll let Finance speak specifically to the impact fees, but I do want to mention, as you all know, that the mayor is very thoughtful and committed to transparency. As such, the open checkbook is also available on the city's website, where that additional information can be identified and located. All of our city department leaders are required to provide specific quarterly updates to council and other public briefings, which will articulate how funding is spent and many other items as well. I'm not sure if our CFO or someone from council will be available to speak to any other details regarding the impact fees.
Yes, Josh, I'm here. This is CFO Council. So we actually capture all of our impact fees in our Department of Planning. That's where the use of all impact fees by the different particular areas, fire, police, and parks and others, that's where those funds are actually administered in the Department of Planning.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Counsel, and thank you, Mr. Williams, for pointing out the open checkbook. And for the public that's listening, the website for that is checkbook.atlantagA.gov. And that is an excellent resource to get some more detail on not just the budget process itself, but how the money is actually spent over the course of the year. I believe that we may have somebody from the law department back on the phone now. Mr. Williams, if we want to go back to the question, and law department, let me know if you need me to read the tree trust fund question again or if you heard it.
Yes, ma'am. Our city attorney has joined our call, and if you could reread it, that would be helpful.
Okay. On March 18th, the Tree Next Door released the results of a year-long investigation of the $3.3 million misappropriation of funds from the Tree Trust Fund. Both the Department of Planning and Parks have systematically shifted over some employees from their own budgets to the Tree Trust Fund budget from 2009 to 2019. The Tree Next Door has written to all council members and the President of City Council to ask for monitoring of the fiscal year 2021 budget to end this practice that is illegal. My question is whether salaries from both the Planning Department and the Parks Department have once again been taken inappropriately from the Tree Trust Fund and are in the draft fiscal budget of 2021. Please review and let me know. Thank you, Stephanie Coffin.
Okay, great. Good evening, Chairwoman Ide. This is Serena Noel. I'm Deputy City Attorney over the Transactions Division. And I actually have two of my attorneys, Reginald McClendon and Jonathan Futrell, on the phone who are able to respond to your question.
Thank you. They can go ahead.
Hello, this is Reginald McClendon. If you can hear me, I believe Jonathan Futrell is also on. Jonathan, are you unmuted yet? I believe that Jonathan is still muted.
Okay, can you all hear me?
I can hear you, Ms. Hickson.
This is Nina Hickson. Under the Tree Trust Ordinance, only 7 city employees can be paid with the Tree Trust Fund dollars, and so the budget will or should reflect that change. In the past, there had been in 2017, 2018, 12 city employee positions that had been paid, and in 2019, 22. But the terms of the ordinance indicate that only 7 can be paid with Tree Trust Fund dollars, and that's divided between the Planning Department and the Parks Department.
Thank you, Ms. Hickson. And I think when we get to the Parks and Planning budget hearings, I anticipate that council members may like to hear a little bit more detail of what is the specifics of what's allowed under the ordinance. So if you all
I can give you
make yourself
a little bit more,
okay,
if you like. It says that only 7 Parks and Rec or Planning Arborist employees can be paid with Tree Trust Fund dollars.
Ms. Hickson, this is Jonathan Cottrell. I'm on the line now as well.
Okay, thank you.
And Councilmember Ide, as Ms. Hickson said, she's absolutely right. The Tree Trust Fund also explicitly outlines those employees in Section 158-66 of the ordinance. It outlines a tree trimming crew, certain arborist staff from the Department of City Planning, as well as staff from the Department of Parks and Recreation. And as you mentioned, Councilmember Ide, at the individual hearings, they department should be able to outline which of those employees from parks and which of those employees from planning will be paid according to those 7 outlined positions.
Okay. Do council members have any questions now on this? It may be that people want to hold their questions and ask them at the department budget hearing. All right. Well, thank you for that information, and we will be hearing from Parks and Rec and Planning later this week, so we may continue this discussion then. But thank you all for making yourselves available this evening.
Absolutely.
All right. I'm going to move on. I just want to note we have a same email that I had read before about preventing cuts and increasing funding to human services to improve the quality of life of disadvantaged citizens. It was the same as we gotten from some other members of the public, but this one came from Sarah Dempster, so I did want just to acknowledge that we had received her comment. All right. From Alina Green. Dear Atlanta City Council members, thank you for an opportunity to weigh in on the city's proposed budget. I am a resident of the city of Atlanta and have been following the process closely. Upon review, I have a few questions that I would like to ask and be answered in tonight's meeting. In last week's budget hearing, the Finance Department shared that the East Side TAD redevelopment goals are, quote, complete. What is their rationale, and why does it contradict the city's previous analysis that stated the goals were not yet complete? Are other TADs at risk of being effectively shut down using the same logic? 2, what is the rationale of poaching economic development dollars in the midst of an economic crisis? The East Side TAD serves the historic black community of Sweet Auburn, where dollars are desperately needed to bring about investment. 3, would the city prefer to have $12 million in operating costs or $45 million to spend on affordable housing and economic development in historically black neighborhoods? We need to think strategically and long term. Let's not forget the opportunity cost inherent in redirecting money to the East Side. We lose $33 million to Fulton County and to APS. 4, is there a legal opinion that can be shared with the public that evidences the legality of shifting East Side TAD dollars as proposed from redevelopment purposes to operating expenses? Thank you in advance for your consideration. I look forward to tuning in tonight. I have another one on related topics, so let me find this one as well. This one says, I'm writing to ask that you reconsider the budget path ahead as previewed by the East Side TAD legislation that was introduced at Council yesterday. I believe you know how we feel about TADs in general, but the timing of this proposed move couldn't come at a worse time. We are a resilient city, and downtown in particular has many challenges, has somehow managed to rebound to many challenges in my lifetime. However, this era is different, and all the challenges are not yet fully in view. But it is clear that the pandemic has and will have a brutal impact on the hospitality, entertainment, sports, and meeting business. That, coupled with the disturbances of the past week, puts our downtown economy in a perilous situation. No one can predict what a rebound will look like, and the city's forecast of property and sales taxes coming from downtown could significantly be impaired for more than a few years, and the subsequent strain on our safety net will be immense. This is going to happen without the TAD going away. If that lever goes away as well, it surely will make matters worse. There are alternatives, which I am glad to discuss. I recognize decisions are very difficult in the current era, but essentially closing the TAD seems a lot more permanent than other options that might be available. Best, A.J. Robinson. Let me just see if there's anything else on East Side TAD. Okay. Dear Atlanta City Council members, as the fiscal year 21 City of Atlanta budgeting process unfolds, it's come to our attention that a significant portion of the East Side Tax Allocation District, ETAD, funding is proposed to be redirected to the city's general fund. I am writing to respectfully request you to reconsider that proposal and ask you for your support of the available increment within the East Side TAD. The East Side TAD is an essential tool that is needed now more than ever as our city faces the long road to economic recovery and a post-COVID reality. A move to undercut only the East Side TAD would be a poor civic policy that further restricts equitable economic development in one of the city's most historic and widely underinvested neighborhoods. Our company, Lord X. Sargent, has worked with property owners in the Sweet Auburn neighborhood through Central Atlanta Progress's real estate Tree Development Services Program in preparation for the forthcoming Eastside TAD Allocation District grant application opportunities. These properties include the Prince Hall Masonic Lodge, the Oddfellows Tower, and the Butler Street YMCA. These buildings are critical landmarks of this district and played critical roles in the civil rights movement. Through this program, the property owners are equipped with plans to move forward with the rehabilitation of these buildings and bring prominence back to Sweet Auburn. Without future ETAD grant funding to support these rehab projects, these buildings and other properties in this program will likely continue to sit neglected and may not have another opportunity to be revived, resulting in an unrecoverable loss of Atlanta's history, and specifically African Americans' history in our city. At this turning point for our country and city, a loss like that would be highly undesirable. The following are just a few reasons we believe that Eastside TAD must be protected. 1, imbalanced policy targeting one area of the city. There is cash available in the majority of all TADs citywide. However, the Eastside TAD is the only TAD targeted as a potential solution to plug a citywide budget hole. The future economic challenges our city faces cannot be borne solely by one neighborhood. Rather, it must be shared collectively and equitably citywide. Disinvestment in economic development tools in a time of economic crisis. Beyond a one-time hit to the available ETAD funds, this action potentially jeopardizes the future existence of the Eastside TAD altogether. Should the other participating jurisdictions, Atlanta Public Schools and Fulton County, seek a similar action, the precedent would also threaten similar actions for TADs elsewhere in the city of Atlanta. Why cut a tool that is effective in spurring economic activity in the time of unprecedented economic crisis, particularly one that enables the city to leverage its initial investment through the collective buy-in of both Atlanta Public Schools and Fulton County? 3, continuing timing and funding setbacks. Since the initial bond issuance, the Eastside TAD has been largely inaccessible despite having significant increment available, tied up in the city's previous disputes with Atlanta Public Schools and then suspended multiple times over the past few years. Furthermore, in January 2019, the Eastside TAD essentially lost 50% of future increments for the remainder of its lifespan given the agreement reached with APS. Any additional reduction in available funding would only be further signal to the landowners and their development partners that this tool is not suitable and would likely ensure that our neighborhood continues to decay. 4th, necessary tool to build affordable housing. Since 2005, the Eastside TAD has awarded projects totaling 2,731 housing units, of which about 1,052, 38%, are affordable units. Another 1,350 plus housing units are potentially in the pipeline, driven by nonprofit or intermission-driven sponsors who will secure the affordability of a large portion of these units well beyond the publicly mandated time frame. Without Eastside TAD as a source of funding, it's highly unlikely these units will be built as a housing affordability challenge has become increasingly acute in the wake of this pandemic. And noting the dwindling prospect of a robust citywide housing bond issuance, the City of Atlanta must make all attempts to preserve the limited existing tools it has to increase the attainable housing stock. Let me take 1 second and see if we had any social media messages regarding the Eastside TAD. All right, I believe those were our questions and comments regarding the Eastside TAD. I'm going to turn it over to you, Mr. Williams, and if I find another one, I will jump in.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I greatly appreciate it. As many of you may have heard this morning, the mayor did speak specifically to this earlier this morning regarding the Eastside TAD. And quite frankly, in an ideal world, it would be great if we could find monies elsewhere. This was not something that was originally proposed prior to the pandemic hitting us. Unfortunately, though, as reality, given where we are now, this is an action that we've had to consider. In order for the administration to become more comfortable with making this recommendation, there were a couple things that I think is important to note. If we're to maintain a strong financial position, I think this measure is one that we certainly need to move forward with. And then there's basically 3 realistic alternatives at this point, which I think will put the city in a much worse position. First, one would be that we would have to increase the fund balance reserve. We would have to increase the use of the fund balance reserve, to nearly $55 million, which we believe is simply irresponsible and unsustainable. Secondly, would have to immediately cut expenses by a further $17 million, which would inevitably impact our workforce. And then third, would need to essentially raise taxes, which we also believe is not the right thing to do, given so many families and businesses are currently struggling at this time, given the COVID impact and many of the other challenges that we're facing. There were a number of just touch points, and ultimately this is a very, very tough decision, but in the administration's view, it is certainly the right one. There were some other questions that were presented, Councilwoman, that I think would be important to hear from our city attorney to the extent that she can regarding the legal foundation for this, as well as I think would be appropriate to turn it over to our Chief Financial Officer to share some additional insights as well. Ms. Hickson, I'll turn it over to you.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Yes.
Okay. I got disconnected, so I wasn't sure what the question was, but as I understand it, it has to do with the legality of the getting increment from the Eastside TAD. Is that the question, or is there something more specific?
That was generally the question. Let me see if I can find the exact wording of that, but that is what it went to, was the ability to use increment and direct it back to the general fund.
Right. So the process for doing that, it is a legal use, and the process for doing that is that the city would receive it as a payment in lieu of taxes. And so under the Georgia Redevelopment Powers Act, you can't do a direct transfer of the money to the general fund, but what would have to happen is there would have to be a revision or amendment to the actual redevelopment plan for the TAD, which would call for the payment in lieu of taxes, and that's an allowable redevelopment cost that allows the city to receive its portion from the increment.
Thank you, Ms. Hickson. CFO Roosevelt, I'll turn it over to you.
Officer, Chief Operating Officer William was right on point when it comes to the potential fallout from this pandemic economically for the city. One of the things that we've actually looked at doing, was to try to examine all of our alternatives, when it comes to closing this potential budget gap that we have. And so we use some of the fund balance, and we actually measure the use of the fund balance from a longevity point of view. We try to manage the use of it, but we also try to balance it with cuts from the departments as well. So we try to look at the expense side as well, which is what we've actually done. But my concern has always been that if we are not able to produce the funding that we have in place for this East Side TAD, then it puts a lot of pressure, as Mr. William mentioned, on additional cuts. And those cuts could actually be affecting head count for the city. One of the things that was mentioned was we, in a prior meeting, there was a comment about this particular TAD being complete. Now, I believe, our thought too was that this TAD has been successful. Okay, there's been 20 projects that have been completed, which amounted to about 2 million square feet of development. And what's even more important for me is that the tax digest has almost tripled as of 2019 since the base year of 2005. But there were other things, that we considered in deciding to pilot back the city's increment from this TAD. One was that there is funding in place for committed projects, and this funding would not be impacted by this transaction. There's also funding in place for proposed projects along the Sweet Auburn corridor. And we also looked at other TADs, just not the East Side TAD. So we could not use them because there was outstanding debt. But there's no debt obligation for the East Side TAD. And so the current funding for the projects that I just mentioned are committed, and the ones for Sweet Auburn, would not be affected by that funding having to be used for any debt. And so this TAD puts itself in a position, to be
a successful TAD, but at this point in time, the decision to actually move the increment back, was the best decision that we felt that we needed to make. This was the TAD that actually provided that opportunity for us. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Counsel. All right, we are getting close. Let's see, a Facebook question. Will hazard pay be extended in the budget? Mr. Williams.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that. The mayor issued an executive order to extend the hazard pay through September. And yes, the city plans to leverage our CARES Act funding to cover the cost of hazard pay.
All right, thank you.
Ms. I?
We have, yes.
Okay, yeah, I had my hand up to ask a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at a million different screens, so I apologize.
I can handle. And thank you. This is for Archibong. Thank you, Ms. Cole, for addressing the concern that I raised relative to the statement that the TAD would complete. I think that's arguably a debatable point. So I do acknowledge. When that there is moral relative to the $2 million earmarked for the number is quadruple that. And so I just would like to continue the dialogue around how we move forward with what we do with this. And you did also mention that you could not do this with any staff. What
Ms. Archibong, are you done? I was having a hard time hearing all of your comments.
It was the most eloquent speech that I had ever made in my life.
I apologize. I don't know if Mr. Counsel and Mr. Williams, you were able to catch all of that. I don't know where the static was.
No, I missed most of all of that.
You hear it better now? I'm going over it again. Can you hear it now?
But that's better.
Can you hear? Okay, good.
Yeah.
I had it on speaker. I'll run through it more quickly. One, thank you for clarifying that saying that the TAD was complete was not inaccurate, was not the intended language, and you did straighten that out. And when you said that there is no financial debt on the East Side TAD, I would submit to you that there is a moral debt. Sweet Auburn is a historically important city for our street for our city, and there's a lot of need yet remaining. And the $10 million that's been earmarked for those remaining projects is woefully deficient. And so there are a number of issues relative to that. And that's a dialogue that I hope that we will continue. But the final point that I made was I'd asked you in a prior conversation, Mr. Counsel, about Princeton Lakes and why, since there's no debt service on that TAD, why the dollars that are there could not be used in the same way that the proposal is relative to the East Side TAD. Did you find out why that's not possible?
Yeah. Actually, Ms. Archibong, there is debt on this particular TAD. Right now, there's about $4.9 million of debt on this TAD.
And how much is in the TAD?
About $5 million in cash.
So
and the annual increment is about $2 million annually.
So is the reason why we couldn't that money in this?
No, I mean that's something that we can consider. We'd had a talk with Invest Atlanta about the Princeton Lakes TAD. And they thought that it could be a possible option as well. My only concern was the debt and I need to look deeper into that debt to make sure that that number has not actually gone above what is shown here, because there is a close relationship between how much that debt is and what is available in cash to be able to take care of it. It's probably about a $500,000 difference.
Okay. All right. When we talked yesterday, whatever day that was, it was 1 point something. So I think we exhaust all possibilities, and if that money is available, that may be helpful for our budget. So I'd like you to continue to update us on what your findings are relative to all the tasks.
Will do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Archibong. It looks like Councilmember Marcy Overstreet has a question as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. My goodness, as soon as I thought that I was going to weigh in with something to say, then Councilmember Archibong said the same thing. I think that is a good idea for us to hear about all of the tabs, because the last I spoke with AFRD, we were supposed to be looking to see if the Princeton Lakes tab had satisfied its commitment to the fire house that was supposed to be built there in 36. We purchased the land. The firehouse is not built yet, and I want to make sure that we are making the right decision by that tab, because it was already a situation where we had to go in with Georgia Power in this last 6 months. Well, it took about a year of paperwork and all that, but the lights are installed on Redwine, which is an extension of the Princeton Lakes tab also, but that they were left out. So let's make sure that we're making good decisions about that tab also. So I don't think we should make any statements about where we're going with Princeton Lakes tab until we're clear about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Counsel, you can respond?
Yes. Well, no, I was going to make reference to something that Councilmember Archibong stated, and to get some clarity. So were you talking about having Princeton Lake in addition to the east side tab? If you were talking about instead of, the Princeton Lake doesn't give us what we actually need. It only provides us with $2 million, and we're actually in this. Okay. All right. I just wanted to get some clarity.
We're cobbling together sources, and I missed part of what you're saying because I heard my line was being unmuted, but I frankly understood that it would be some money, not the entirety of the money that we need, and I'm glad that Councilmember Overstreet brought up the fire station, which I did bring up to you, Mr. Counsel, because I had some understanding that that was an outstanding issue. So just want to understand all of the possibilities before we just say this is the only solution to our budget challenges. Okay?
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmembers Archibong and Overstreet. I want to just recognize that we've covered this topic, but comment from Jen Wilkers: how will increase services, housing, food, jobs, healthcare, education, et cetera, and resources in order to care for and provide for our most disenfranchised and vulnerable? In light of recent demands from citizens, will funding come from police budgets? If not, why and where will it come from? I believe Mr. Keene has covered that. All right, moving on to mostly a transportation question comment from Twitter. It says, invest heavily in protected bike lanes, dedicated bus lanes, complete streets, expand affordable housing with opportunity at less than equal to 60% AMI, MARTA access for those less than equal to 18 years old, and meals for students K through 12. So we've covered a lot of those topics. I don't know if Mr. Williams, if there's anything that the administration wants to add there.
Just simply, we're still committed to that, as we stated before. Commissioner Rowan, I don't know if you have any additional insight you would like to share regarding the transportation elements of that question.
Yes, sir. This is Josh Rowan again, Commissioner of Department of Transportation. Yes, I actually saw that tweet as well, and we certainly want to be expanding the network of protected lanes within the city. In fact, recently we entered into a slight experiment with Central Atlanta Progress, looking at different types of devices that are low cost and high performance to protect our bike lanes. And so we're continuing to roll that out. So full agreement on the expansion of the bike network within the city.
Okay, and dedicated bus lanes?
That too. If you go back and look at the presentation we made to committee for the budget hearings, we are working with MARTA. In fact, met with them today, talking about where would be the most ideal locations for dedicated bus lanes within the city.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Rowan and Mr. Williams. Moving on to a Facebook question by Zina Ghazi. Again, apologies if I'm mispronouncing the name. The question was, what about test centers? The commenter doesn't specify, but I'm guessing this may be a COVID-related question. Mr. Williams?
I think if the question is, do we have them? We do have a list of testing centers that's posted on our ATL Strong website that can be referenced, and certainly we would encourage those who would like to take advantage of that to visit our website so that they can see the locations of those to provide support to our communities.
All right, thank you so much. Let me just make sure that we have gotten to everything. This is another transportation-related comment/question from Sophia Davidson. I have been a resident of Atlanta for over 2 years, and my partner has been a resident for 5. We both have experience in public transportation research and urban planning, so the city's issues in those regards were immediate and glaring, and they continue to devolve. The city of Atlanta must prioritize the maintenance and enhancement of its public infrastructure, including MARTA, our streets and sidewalks, as well as addressing the absolutely ridiculous amount of new construction which seemingly has no city oversight. That can be done by using the proposed $262 million for police on updating and expanding MARTA rail lines and bus routes, as well as increased pay for all MARTA employees, severely limiting the number of building permits that may be granted, as well as imposing limits as to the number of each type of development, for example, apartments and office buildings that may be built in a given year, increasing construction accountabilities so there are no longer ripped up, blocked off, or otherwise unusable stretches of sidewalk that people use regularly, impose fines, imposing rules on length of construction time per development so the same eyesores aren't sitting around the city for years, impose fines for every single office space or apartment unit that goes unoccupied. This is the least of what can be done right now. My challenge to you is, how are you going to center your citizens in the upcoming year? How will you focus on the needs of our most vulnerable instead of on the needs of out-of-state capitalists who have absolutely no interest in the health of our city? Do better. Listen to the people who serve you. Please contact me with any further questions, or if you are in need of resources. I think we've touched on many of these items. I don't know if Mr. Williams, you may want to just touch on the relationship between the city and MARTA on the first part of her question of using city funds for MARTA.
So we are actually in close work with MARTA, specifically as it relates to many of the projects that's under our More MARTA program. We'll continue to have a very strong connection with them as we work through those projects. But I would simply add that I think that coordination with them as it relates to the work that we're doing in Renew Atlanta and many of our other transportation efforts will definitely be appropriate. MARTA operations also is not funded from the city's general fund. So, specifically talking about funding for MARTA operations would be separate from this conversation related to this expected budget.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. I think, Atlanta can be a complicated city with our county's independent school system, independent transit system that all have relationships that are different entities. And I think that's not always clear until you're deep into the weeds. But we do have a close working relationship with MARTA. I don't know if there's anything else from that comment. I think we have pretty much addressed the other issues there. I will give, if you'll allow me, Mr. Rowan, I know, did address at transportation some thoughts he has on accountability for people tearing up our streets and sidewalks and getting folks who do that, doing construction projects, to do better on not doing that or paying to have them put back in place. Let me see. All right, this is a parking Facebook question from Margaret Mullen. Hello, why is parking moving under planning and strategy, and what will it be used for? I hope parking fees would be used as a revenue source for essential transportation and sustainable transportation for people who do not drive, and that you might consider increasing parking fees in some instances in order to encourage sustainable transportation use and elevate sustainable transportation.
Mr. Rowan, we'll turn it over to you.
Hello?
We can hear you now.
Okay, thank you.
Let me interrupt you real quick,
yeah.
Mr. Rowan. It looks like there was actually another part to this that came in an email that I didn't get, and it may relate to you as well. So let me just finish this up. Same from Margaret Mullins, to request that police funding not increase and those funds are instead allocated towards social services, but then increase and prioritize sidewalk coverage equitably, especially in areas in which lots of people walk and use MARTA. That was the same person who had asked about the parking strategy. So I'll hand it back over to you now. Okay,
so again, Josh Rowan, Commissioner of Department of Transportation. The thing to remember about the move with parking is it's still within DOT. We have 3 divisions within DOT: planning and strategy, capital project delivery, and then our transportation infrastructure management. It essentially had been housed within the maintenance team. We're moving it within our planning component. So it's not being moved to city planning, it's just being moved to a different operational unit within DOT. That being said, we're definitely looking at all options related to parking, especially things like commercial use, even how could we implement a permit system to support curbside service at restaurants. So a lot of conversations are being had. In fact, we're partnering with Central Atlanta Progress through a grant with ARC to look at curb management and better uses of that curb space. Regarding the question about inequity and sidewalks and supporting MARTA, 100%. I don't think I think the question answers itself. We are certainly very, very much concerned about the safety within our streets, promoting walkability, and then using the streets to further support efficient transit within the city. So, without a doubt, the safety of our streets, as well as the current inequities that exist, we want to be addressing those as we move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Rowan. All right, we are almost at the tail end here, and then I'm going to ask staff if they'll make sure that I didn't miss any. This is a text. Hello, I'm texting regarding the proposed budget. I'd like to see the city prioritize funding education, providing wraparound services to ensure that all students are equipped to succeed. I'd like to see a reduction in funding to police and those funds redirected to community initiatives, job skills training, and general social services that protect the most marginalized. Last, I'd like for there to be funds directed towards equitable housing initiatives. Atlanta should work for everyone, not just some. I think we've addressed most of that, but maybe, Mr. Williams, you all have a comment on the supporting education and providing wraparound services.
Yes, ma'am. As you know, the mayor has a very thoughtful focus under the One Atlanta platform to support education, specifically in close partnership with our partners over at APS. We will continue that focus and provide additional programming through our Parks and Recs department, specifically related to our youth programming as well, as that will be a continued priority for this administration.
Thank you, and I believe this is our last question unless somebody tells me I missed one. Says, hi, I'm a resident of Midtown Atlanta. What will the updated budget review process be in light of recent events? Thank you. I don't know if the administration has any updates to the budget in light of recent events, but I'll turn that over to you, Mr. Williams.
I think we've talked about a number of budget amendments that we will be bringing forth to councils for your consideration, specifically as it relates to the individual departments. We will continue along that path. As I mentioned before, earlier in our presentation, one of the major amendments that will be coming forward is related to our corrections department as we seek to establish the Department of Equity and Wellness. And that focus will primarily be to support the redeployment of our corrections employees to areas of operations and community-based priorities across the city.
All right, thank you so much for that. And I believe, unless somebody waves their hand at me, that covered all of our public input, which was remarkable. I want to say I really do appreciate the public sticking with us as we took this into a virtual format. We had 18 voicemails, 25 text messages, 3 Facebook questions, a number of Twitter messages, and 57 emails. And so even though we couldn't be together in city council chambers as we usually are on tonight, I appreciate everybody reaching out in the many different ways that they did to, play your role in participating in the budget process. Colleagues, let me know if anybody has, and we had 30 additional questions that were received during the course of the meeting. So a tremendous amount of public input, I would say probably even more so than other years when we are together in person. Colleagues, wave your virtual hand if anybody has any final questions, comments, thoughts. Well, if not, I just want to thank Mr. Williams and your entire team for being here tonight. This was a long meeting. We've been going over 2.5 hours, but I do think that this is such an important part of our government in action, is hearing from our citizens as we put together a budget, because the budget reflects the priorities of council and the mayor, and we do want to hear from you. So I appreciate everybody sticking it out until the bitter end tonight so that we could get through all of the questions and comments that were shared with us. And with that, I'm going to wrap it up, and we will continue back with the budget process tomorrow. We will begin up at 10 with our Department of Parks and Recreation, at 11 with the Department of Law, at 12 Municipal Court, and at 1 o'clock with the Office of Public Defender, and 1:30 with the Office of Solicitor. If the public is still on the line, Thursday will be City Planning, Finance, Office of Enterprise Asset Management, ATL 311. There's also a call at 3:30 on Thursday with the mayor, an update on COVID. And then Friday's our last day of budget hearings that we have aviation, public works, and the personnel paper where we discuss all of the employment moves across the city that relate to the budget. So check out the City Council Facebook page, Twitter page, or our website, and you can get the full calendar for all of that and instructions about how you can participate. And with that, I'm going to tell everybody thank you and good night.